Blank check with Griffin and David. Blank check with Griffin and David. Don't know what to say or to expect. All you need to know is that the name of the show is Blank Check.
David is 11 years old. He weighs 60 pounds. He's 4 feet 6 inches tall. He has brown hair. His love is real. But he is podcast.
Only 60 pounds.
I want to say something.
Yeah.
Those stats are almost identical to me at that age. I know for a fact I was 60 pounds and 4'6", and I was 12 when this movie came out.
Yeah. I don't know how much I weigh now or then.
I'm 62 now. Hi, everybody. My name is Griffin Newman.
I'm David Sims.
Welcome to Blank Check with Griffin and David. This is a podcast where we go through filmographies of directors who have massive success early on and then are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want. Sometimes the check's clear, and sometimes they bounce, baby.
Great.
This is a miniseries about the films of Steven Spielberg with the biggest blank check of all time when he founded DreamWorks Pictures, his own studio. Post-Oscar win, he had nothing to prove and everything to gain. And it's called Pod Me If You Cast.
Yes, that's
Pause
the name.
for laughter and applause.
Yeah, thank you. Our guest likes that.
Our guest likes it. And today we're talking about what I believe you've said is your single favorite film in the Spielberg filmography. Is that correct?
This is my personal favorite Spielberg, although I know that's, kind of like a big jerky, hot takey thing to say. Like, obviously I like E.T.
Right, but
or
just
whatever,
to restate,
Yeah.
you're saying in terms of personal preference,
Yeah,
not objective
definitely.
greatness, right?
I've seen
in terms of personal preference, not just within this miniseries, but the entire filmography. This is your favorite.
Yeah, which is, I don't think a lot of people would agree with me.
Right. And the film, of course...
But I'm not trying to be a jerk about it.
No. This is up there for me. The movie, of course, we're talking about is PC, Artificial Castelligence.
No. No.
AI, Artificial Intelligence.
An awkward title.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
With no colon either.
No.
It's the acronym and then what the acronym is.
Two old American words.
Like calling a movie like FYI for your information, right? Like it's a silly title.
That's a cool
didn't he do
title.
Oh, sorry.
No. We like
didn't he do that to
introduce
mirror E.T. the extraterrestrial?
I feel like E.T.
But then why
has
doesn't
a
he call it
colon.
AI the artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Right. A, yes, that. B, I think E.T. is E.
E.T. has no colon.
Really?
No colon.
Well, he does. I mean, how else would he poop?
Well, we don't see him poop. So
David, one comedy point. Give me one.
All right, one comedy point.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't really do that. I don't really give the comedy points, which is funny because it's a bit we do.
You should try to be a little more generous.
No, I think it's good that I'm very sparing.
You're the Scrooge of comedy points.
Yep.
Old miserly Sims over here.
AI, artificial intelligence.
We have a very exciting guest on the show today.
He's currently
Just over here highlighting my notes and my 3 pages of notes that I took on this film.
putting his notes in a little box like on an old movie when they would, on the posters, and they would put someone's name in a box to prove that they were more important.
He is the most prepared of any guest we've had on the show.
I think that's true.
He's taken out a notebook full of graph paper that is filled to the brim with notes.
In block capitals.
Yes.
The most artificial intelligence way of writing.
That's true.
And let's say this.
What if it was like David's weird notes? It was like, I love mommy and Teddy loves mommy, but I don't love Teddy. Is that what your notes are like?
No, my notes are pretty boring.
We have wanted this guest on the show so badly that I believe socially at one point you threw out, like, what movie would you ever want to talk about? And you said AI.
No, it was, you came to me.
Really?
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, you were like, look, you guys, I think I had mentioned to you that we had thought about doing Spielberg one
This
day.
was like
and you were
3
like,
miniseries ago.
If you ever
Right.
wanted to do Spielberg, like, I want AI.
Right.
You earmarked this a long time ago.
But I'll say that was like a motivator towards us actually finally doing the miniseries, was the ability to do this episode.
Really? The AI, artificial intelligence, 6-hour spectacular?
I've always wanted to do this.
Yeah, but I'm saying that I'm trying to hype up the guest. How excited we are to have him.
No, we're so excited to have him here.
Yes. Where do you know him from? Many different places. The sadly defunct television series Going Deep with David Rees, which was one of my favorite shows on television.
Really?
I was a huge fan.
Oh, thank you. I don't think I knew that. Thank you. I
You
appreciate that.
changed the way I tie my shoes.
Ah,
Amongst other things, but that's the big one on a
Wonderful.
day-to-day basis.
awesome.
In
Thank
my,
you.
In
I
my
appreciate that,
telephone, everybody's name has an emoji. I give everyone, and yours is a piece of bread because the toast episode of Going Deep is my personal
All right.
favorite. of
Yeah,
Going Deep.
yeah. I like that.
It's a phenomenal show that people should watch.
Check out. Can it be checked out? Is it hard to check it out right now?
I think it's kind of
It's
hard
like
to find.
You need to download it illegally, maybe?
I think you can buy it on Amazon Prime. There's
Okay.
2 seasons, and the seasons were on 2 different networks, and it's kind of. I think start with Amazon Prime, and if that doesn't work, just send me an email, and I'll
do.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's
Do
say
what
this:
you gotta do.
worth the hunt. Much like our
Okay, so this is
our
weird.
young hero searching for the blue fairy. You should not give up.
It is the blue fairy of instructional television programming.
6 of the 10 episodes in your first season are available on Amazon Prime, and 4 are not.
Really?
And it's totally arbitrary. The 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 9th episodes are not available.
Our guest is David Rees, by the way.
Yeah, hey David. Election
Hi.
Profit Makers. I mean, what else?
Get Your
What
War
other
On.
wonderful
I don't know.
things?
It's, yeah, a lot of just random stuff.
An amazing career, a storied career that now caps off with the highlight of it all:
The final chapter.
AI, artificial intelligence.
Yep. AI, artificial intelligence.
So this is Spielberg's first film in 3 years after Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, so he's working.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's working in his 3 bursts.
That's insane.
He takes a
This is the
big
first
break.
movie he made after Saving Private Ryan?
Yep.
Because it goes in 97, 98, he does Lost World, Amistad, Saving Private Ryan. And
Right,
then
yes.
in the upcoming, he did from 01 to 02, he does AI, Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can. He does these 3 movie bursts.
Yeah.
And then in 05, 06, he does War of the Worlds Munich. Oh, no, sorry, 04, 05, he does Terminal War of the Worlds in Munich.
And then he disappears until Crystal Skull in 08.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's in this weird, he has these flurries of creative activity.
But it's like Lost World, or rather Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, drop the mic, walks away for 4 years, comes back, delivers 2 flops, Amistad and Lost World, right? Lost World does well but sucks, Amistad doesn't work.
Right.
And then he disappears, or no, then he does Saving Private Ryan.
He wins another Oscar.
Highest grossing film of the year, drops the mic again for 3 years, comes back with AI. Now, the big thing that happens in between 1998 and 2001 is Stanley Kubrick dies.
Yeah. And I think we can talk about it, but that was what spurred him to make the movie, right? He was like,
Right.
okay, we got to honor Stanley, I guess. Stanley's memory.
And differing stories,
He
differing
did the kind
accounts.
of, this will be the movie I make, right? Like, he sort of did the put off everything else. Like,
Yeah, I need
we
to
have
make
get
this
done or
now.
whatever. Yeah.
Kubrick had been developing this movie for ages, but in a sort of very vague kind of way. Like I know the whole thing was that he knew he wanted to make a movie about a robot child, but that
Do
the
you
technology
I know it
was
all.
never
Do you know
totally
this
there.
stuff, David? Or
No.
Can I? Okay,
No.
so yeah, Stanley Kubrick was obsessed with this story. Super Toys Last All Summer Long.
Which is from the 60s,
From
right?
the 70s,
Yeah.
Brian Aldiss story, and it's just the first third of this movie. It is what the story is. It's just the robot boy comes to his,
Okay.
and there's the Teddy as a character, and like that. It was just that. Because Stanley Kubrick is crazy, he wanted to build a robot child.
Right, he wanted to wait
In
until
real
they
life,
could build
he
a
did?
real robot for
He
the
was
movie.
like, "We'll wait for the tech to catch up so that we can have like an artificial child." Right? I know.
Are you
David Smith-
serious?
Yeah,
100%. So I don't think the movie was ever that actively developed because he was like, well, I'll just kick it around in my brain a little, but we can't really
Right.
start scripting until the robot exists.
Right.
And apparently,
Got to write for the robot.
Got to write for the robot.
the film, and then Kubrick decided that this was a quote picaresque version of The Adventures of Pinocchio, and so he handed Ian Watson or whoever wrote the first
Yeah.
sort of screenplay.
Who gets screen story
Pinocchio.
credit on this.
Yeah, and he said like, you have to get Pinocchio into this. Like, this is a Pinocchio story. Like, this is what it's going to be. And then at some point they made a robot child and they did like a screen test, and apparently it was so horrifying that like Kubrick was like, forget it. Like, and I would love to see
Oh
what
my
this,
gosh, that'd be
this
amazing.
nightmarish,
They just had
like,
some
realistic
crummy-
robot child look like.
Crummy
In
robot clanking around, reading lines.
In the 90s, like in the early 90s, like
Oh my gosh.
Can I tell a crazy side story?
Chris Cunningham, the music video director who
Yeah.
did the Bjork video with the robots and stuff.
Yeah.
He was part of this process. He was brought on to try and
Can I tell a crazy side
tell
story?
your crazy side story.
Early 80s when my dad was sort of kicking around, didn't know what he was doing in his career, he worked for this guy named Lewis Allen, who was like a big Broadway producer who did Annie and a lot of stuff.
Okay.
And Lewis Allen was like an old like establishment guy, but he was really into like youth counterculture.
Okay.
And he became very close with Andy Warhol, and he thought Andy Warhol was fascinating. And he was like, you should do a one-man show on Broadway where you tell stories as Andy Warhol. And Andy Warhol was like, I'll only do it if it's a robot. And so they, for like a year or two, developed an Andy Warhol robot that was going to do a Broadway one-man show where the robot told Andy Warhol stories. And it was like apparently a similar thing. Like my dad's talked about it in passing, but as like this very traumatizing thing when they were like, okay, the robot's ready, and they all just were freaked out.
Like
by
the
it.
robot came out and
Yeah.
It must have been like one of those Disney Hall of
Yes.
Presidents automatons.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. I think they were talking to the
Yeah.
Imagineers to try
Right.
to make this Andy Warhol robot.
Right.
I know in the early 90s, Kubrick started talking more seriously about doing it with Joseph Mazzello.
yes,
right?
they screen tested Joseph Mazzello, who's the boy in Jurassic Park. And but they also built little robot type humans. That's Chris Cunningham saying. But it was a total failure. It looked awful. I mean, yeah.
But this is sort of
So
when
then
he and
he
Spielberg
hands
start
it to
touching
Spielberg.
on right. He goes, I think this might be more of a Spieley movie than a Kubi movie.
And apparently, I know a lot about this movie because I was obsessed with it when I was a teenager. They would fax each other all the time
Mhm.
because Kubrick lived in his big mansion in England, and he's making Eyes Wide Shut, and God knows what else he's doing. But he would fax all these ideas to Steven Spielberg, and Spielberg would fax them back, and I just like the idea of them
That's fun.
faxing
Yeah.
each other. Yeah. And then Spielberg, Kubrick dies. Eyes Wide Shut comes out, and Spielberg decides to roll up his sleeves and write his first screenplay since Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Which is the thing I find most fascinating about
Yeah.
this movie is
He
that
wrote
he
it.
wrote it and he has sole screenwriting credit.
Oh, that's such a power. That makes me love this movie more.
It
It kind of makes me love Steven Spielberg more.
I love Steven Spielberg, but I would love to ask him, why did you feel like you had? He doesn't.
No,
right,
he doesn't do that.
He likes to work with your Tony Kushners, right? Your big Hollywood,
Your Jeff Nathansons.
your Eric Roths.
Yeah, your David Kepps.
Yeah.
But it's very fascinating to me because the hype for this movie was so huge. Because we were at this sort of threshold in effects, I think, where everyone was like, "Oh shit, Spielberg making a serious robot movie.
And
Who knows what this is even going to fucking look
He's
like?"
making his first sci-fi movie since
Yeah.
Close Encounters. I mean, I don't know, since E.T.
E.T.
Yeah.
But
But
you
even
know,
that's-
right? There's some
E.T.
juice there.
is one sci-fi element in Suburbia. He hasn't done a whole cloth world building thing since Hook, which was a fucking disaster, and that's not the right milieu for him. This was an exciting thing.
Mhm.
He had never gone this deep into a sci-fi world.
He'd never done a future movie.
Right.
Right.
And then the Kubrick Spielberg thing was just both of them together. What's this fucking gonna look like?
Yeah.
Dream Team.
Right. And it was
Dead Kubrick and living Spielberg, Dream Team.
Well, I think
And
it was
a little
always
a little robot boy to bring them together.
the most idealized version of it was if you have Kubrick's precision and intelligence with Spielberg's emotions, and maybe the two of them can make something. We don't even know what this movie would function like. Because the complaint against Kubrick is that he's a little cold and distant. Even the people who love him go that's his thing. And Spielberg, the complaint is he's a master manipulator, but sometimes he manipulates too much. It was, what if they could?
Oil and water, right?
What if they meet
could-
in the middle?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that kind of doomed the movie. I think the movie's reputation is better now that it's viewed as a Spielberg movie
Yeah,
wholly.
Yeah, people were like, "Oh, well, I liked the Kubrick stuff." That you would hear that a lot. I don't know if you heard this, David, when you saw it, but people would sort of say "Well, there was this cool dark stuff." I assume that's Kubrick's
What is
influence.
the Kubrick stuff in it?
That's the thing is, I think it's all Spielberg.
Well, it's all Spielberg and Kubrick.
Yeah.
Kubrick's laid out this story and Spielberg wrote it, but nothing was changed. I think Kubrick added a lot of the Rouge City stuff, the middle stuff. That was all his idea.
That's well, all right.
But then the end is his idea too. The whole Pinocchio thing's his idea. That was the story that he handed Spielberg, and Spielberg,
It was a movie they developed
Wrote it,
together.
yeah.
It's you can't
You can't separate
the
it,
two
right,
things.
yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't they were the Postal Service and they were sending parts of it.
Right.
It wasn't Exquisite Corpse,
Okay. So when did you see this movie, David?
I saw it right. I saw it in the theater in
It came out June 2001, right at the end of June.
so I probably saw it in July 2001 at BAM, a Brooklyn art cinema. Is it an art? Whatever, you know what I mean.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Fancy movie theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually had dinner with a friend of mine last night, and I told him I was coming on this podcast. I guess you could say I was bragging a little.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's a big brag.
I said, "Do you remember when we saw AI together?" And he said, "I never saw AI with you." And I was like, "Really? I was sure we saw it together." And he was like, No, I don't think I've ever seen it. But I do remember I had what I think was I saw it in the theater. I really don't remember what I thought about most of the movie. But I do remember towards that final act, the bonus act,
Sure. Yeah.
after 2,000 years underwater,
Mm-hmm.
feeling like this movie is crazy. And people in the audience snickering
Sure.
and being vocal in their disdain for what they thought was this incredibly treacly, feel-good ending.
Right. It is
But I
fairly creepy ending. Although it's
yeah,
also
can we say for the
fascinating.
record, I consider this one of the most disturbing movies I've like. I find this movie. I associate this movie with a pervasive sense of dread,
Yeah, it's one of
And
the
I
most
think-
fatalistic movies I've ever
and
seen.
I think
Yeah.
it is. I think once you realize it is a horror movie about the human condition, you realize this movie is incredible. And I think the disdain that a lot of people have for it is they cannot handle the intensely bleak
It's very
worldview
sad.
that Steven Spielberg is dropping on everybody.
I think that's pretty fair.
Especially since it's the opposite of what his movies usually kind of give you walking out of the
Right.
theater,
Right.
the
So you
takeaway.
assume, well,
But
you,
also
you,
people
you know
interpret this
Spielberg
ending as a
made it,
happy
and so you
ending.
assume that it's
Right.
going to be so you reinterpret everything through this lens of like, well, he's sleeping with his mommy. That's such a Spielberg ending. The kid gets what he wants. It's like, this is really crazy and
Yeah.
fucked up and dark.
He essentially kills her at the end of the movie by bringing her back to life.
Yeah.
He's removing her from the space-time continuum so she can never exist again.
No, it's and all. Yeah, I think this movie is incredibly dark and bleak and disturbing. And
I would agree.
yeah, I feel like it's a horror. You know, you've ever seen Synecdoche, New York, the
I
Charlie Kaufman movie?
Yes, I think we're both fans.
One of my all-time favorite movies.
Well, and you know the story of that movie is that they asked him to make a horror movie, and he was like, "Well, what's the scariest thing in the world? Growing old and dying. So I'll make a horror movie about that." And this and that movie to me also has a sense of real dread,
Yeah.
creeping menace.
Yeah,
and
that
that's the
movie's tough to
same.
watch.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about AI, artificial intelligence.
It's so weird. I
Oh, who's
I
this?
thought this was such a feel good movie.
No,
No,
dude,
definitely,
no.
definitely.
Just really cheered me up.
Definitely
made me
not.
feel good.
David, you asked who this is. This is Ben.
Hi.
All right, do your thing.
What thing?
You know all the names for Ben.
Oh no, I'm sorry. This isn't that Ben.
Oh, this is different.
Well, that's producer Ben has all the nicknames.
Right.
But,
I brought my own producer, Ben.
well, so our Ben was not available today.
Uh-huh.
He had booked a prior engagement, so David brought his own Ben bot.
Oh, this is a Ben.
This is a Ben bot.
Well, that's probably why he thought it was a feel good movie.
I am so excited to talk about this movie because it makes me feel like a boy.
Is it a game?
No,
I'd like to play.
Say his best line, his first line in the movie. I like your floor.
It's a good, and his weird
So-
little ballet shoes that he's wearing.
I like your floor.
I like your floor.
When did you see this movie, Griffin?
Okay, so I got a little bit of a crazy story.
It's like you never just go sit down and see a movie. Every time it's some goddamn convoluted
Are you ready for
story.
this one?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
I went to the world premiere of AI.
Oh, wow.
Really?
David Rees spits his coffee
I was
out
at a spit take.
in shock.
Where was the world premiere? It must have been in Los
Ziegfeld
Angeles.
Theater in New
Oh,
York
it was in
City.
New York City. Okay.
Yeah, with like everyone fucking there. My grandmother is like essentially like a professional cocktail party attendee.
It's a fun job.
Yeah, she's like an actual like a socialite in the traditional use of the term rather than what's become today.
Right.
And she's someone who's like twice gone to the Academy Awards without a ticket.
That's great.
She's-
She just like walked
Are
in.
you from a showbiz family?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from a family that exists in a weird sphere around show business.
Okay.
But I'm not like Randy Newman's son,
Okay.
despite trying to tell myself my entire childhood that I was.
It would have been great.
It would have been great. I would have been so good as Randy Newman's son. But yeah, my grandmother like worked as a liaison for a tertiary film festival in the north of France,
Sure.
getting actors to come. So her entire life is just that she has like connections and communications with people. And so she hasn't paid for a movie in like 35 years because she just goes to screenings of everything. And she doesn't usually go premieres, but somehow she got tickets to this and brought me. And I was like a ride or die HJO fan at this point. That was my
Haley
big
Joel
appeal.
Osment.
Because I was like 12 and I was starting to get like angsty and I thought Spielberg was a fucking hack. You know? I was
Whoa.
like, this master manipulator, he's a fucking hack. I don't want to be manipulated. Give me the truth. Like the live action Scooby-Doo movie. Give me the straight shit. Right?
But had Haley Joel been in anything but The Sixth Sense?
Uh,
Was this his second movie, wasn't it?
Pay It Forward comes out later this year, right? This was the second movie, I think.
No, Pay It Forward had already come out.
It had? Okay.
Yeah.
So Pay It Forward, I was really into.
Oh, what
My
a
dad always
horrible
mocks
movie.
me. My dad always mocks me because the lights came up and I turned to him and I went, Best Picture, Best Director.
Oh my god.
I predicted it was going to win the top 5 categories.
Such an idiot.
Yeah, I was a
You're
fucking
dumb
dummy.
idiot.
I was a fucking dummy.
Uh-huh. Okay, so you
Wow.
went to you liked Haley Joel, you went to the
But I was
premiere.
like, this Spielberg bullshit. Everyone else was like, excited for this. And I was like, it looks dumb. And I went to the premiere, and it was a star-studded event. Mike Myers was 2 rows behind us. I was flipping out, right? And then the movie starts, and I just from frame one digging it so hard. There is such a palpable sense of dread. Like, I was like, oh, this movie actually reflects my worldview now as a 12-year-old who's starting to become aware of the world around him and is terrified by all of humanity and sees how pointless all of it is, you know?
Wait, so you picked up on that even when you were a kid, the dark part of the movie?
Because I was a really dark kid.
Oh.
I was a
kid.
very dark, creepy little kid. In addition to being the exact same size as David the Robot,
Right.
I was kind of like him in this movie. Like, the constant fear of not being loved.
Right. Yeah.
In just a sit in a corner and like shudder kind of way.
Keep me safe. Keep me safe.
Right, that
Right.
kind of thing. The keep me safe thing. That was like me. So I saw it and I was like, this feels like an autobiography.
Great.
And I also I love robotics.
Mm-hmm.
I love robotics as like a theme. I love the visual sort of patina robotics, and I just felt like all of that is so well realized in this movie. Loved it. It was the premiere audience, so everyone like flipped for it. It got a fucking standing ovation.
Really?
Yeah. And I
mean,
remember
it is
like
a world, the premiere. They all
Is that
they
usually
all
a
laid
safe
on
bet of
thick.
it? Really?
Yeah.
All
But
right.
like when Jude Law's name came up in the end credits, people went like ballistic, and it was like he's gonna win Best Supporting Actor this year. Like everyone was like drinking the Kool-Aid, right?
Right.
And I went home to my parents and I was like, it's amazing. And they were like, but I thought you hate Spielberg. And I was like, that's old Griff. He's a fucking dummy. AI's the truth. And I like hyped up to all my friends at school and I told my parents. And then like 3 weeks later it comes out and everyone calls me and they're like, what's this fucking bullshit? My parents called me. I was at summer camp. And I called them on the payphone. And they were like, we were like snickering at the end of it. When the teddy bear comes up with the hair, it's goofy. It's like a dumb kid's movie. What the fuck are you talking about, Griff?
No, it's.
Yeah, no, they're
Think
wrong.
about how terrifying his line read when he hands the hair to them, and he's like, "And now you can bring her back, can't you?" Or something.
Yeah.
It's like this. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree
yeah.
with you. And that thing, he has enough purpose to understand. Like when they're like, we want you to be happy. And he's like, then you know what you
Right.
have to do.
You have to let me go to bed with my mommy.
But there was a period of time.
I'm gonna make her a cup of coffee. God damn
Right.
it!
There was a period of time where I wondered, did I only like it because I saw it in the premiere and that's like
Right.
the
Yeah,
sort of
yeah, yeah.
environment?
Did you get the
And then there was
festival
also a
fever,
time where I was
basically?
like, years passed, and I was like, well, I was like 12. I haven't rewatched it. I was like, I had a lot of dumb opinions at that time.
Right.
Yeah,
like,
apparently
I don't
you,
know.
pay it forward.
Right, exactly. So I was like, was I just so on the HJO train that I like couldn't see objectively? And I maybe watched it again like when I was 18. I didn't see it between 12 and 18 and was just like, nope, this fucking rules. And I've seen it like 4 or 5 times since then. I love it. I think it's a
Wow.
great movie.
Yeah.
I don't think
Go ahead, David.
it's not a movie I would.
Weirdly, I rewatched this movie a lot. as a
Really?
teenager,
It
once-
just feels too bludgeoning.
It is, but I've seen it a lot. I
Once
think that's
a
one
year,
reason I can handle it too.
I get that itch. And it's the same thing with Synecdoche, which is one of my favorite movies. Sometimes
That's
I'm
a
just
movie
like,
I cannot rewatch.
sometimes I need to watch it because nothing else is going to be like, you know?
I'm
Tickle that.
It's like a bloodletting or something,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
I'm never there. I'm never there where I'm like Synecdoche, New York. I get the idea that watching a sad movie helps you, expel certain sort of emotions or whatever. Like
You find
process.
Synecdoche, New York, darker than AI, artificial intelligence?
Synecdoche, New York is about death. Like and that
Right.
freaks me out much more. Mortality, right? AI, obviously, it's about that as well, but it's also to me, it's about religion, which I love. Like it's about
Right.
like man's relationship to God, right, or his
Right.
creator, and like
Right.
the weird purposelessness of our existence is blown out enough. And of course, it has the sci-fi look. Has the genre feel. That that's like a nice little gauzy layer. I mean, Synecdoche kind of does too, to be fair. But Synecdoche is about like being ill and like
Right.
it's so like gray and ugh.
But when you
God, I love the movie. I love
when
it.
you
I just-
rewatch
tough.
this movie, do you watch it with pleasure?
That's a good question.
I mean, I know it doesn't make you happy,
doesn't
right?
make me
No,
happy.
no.
But you know what, right? I mean, like, why do people watch horror movies? Why do they watch sad movies, right? Like, isn't it more just sort of like you get some kind of cathartic
Yeah, I
release
guess,
out of it?
yeah.
Or like, I like processing these thoughts. I've also, all right, so I saw the movie in theaters. It came out in Britain after September 11th.
Humble brag.
Right after, like to the 21st. I double checked it, but it's the 21st of September.
Wow.
And so I remember it was like particularly, I saw it like opening day and the Twin Towers are in that fucking thing.
Right.
And everyone in the audience like shuddered when that happened. Like, and it was a British audience, but,
Yeah.
Right.
nonetheless. And I was talking to David about this before we started recording, but like this was the movie where I liked it a lot when I saw it. I loved it. I saw it with all my friends. They all hated it. We like walked out. They were all mocking it. And I didn't know what to do. It was like one of those early, like, I'm like, wait, why am I like so wrong on this? Like, or like,
Yeah.
guess I had that anxiety.
Right.
And I bought it on DVD, and I bought the soundtrack. I was a little weirdo.
That's effed up that you own the soundtrack.
It's weird, right? It's like weird. I have it on CD.
Are you an only child? You're not, are you?
No, my brother.
Right.
And I got my brother into this damn movie. He yesterday was like, he's excited for this episode, and he was like, "Where's the DVD? I need that DVD." You know, like, yeah. David's just quietly thinking, processing this information.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you both saw it when you were younger than I was when I saw it, and for both of you, it feels like you knew right out of the gate what it was you were watching and how to respond to it. Whereas I think I had to see it again or do some reading about it before I realized.
I did.
Oh,
too.
the reason everyone's laughing is because they can't handle it.
Yeah.
No, I definitely was baffled by the ending the first time I saw it. I think the tone struck me oddly. Like, I didn't get why it was so, like, heavenly, like, you know, in, like, sort of, I guess, you know, like, I didn't get the voiceover. I didn't get why it was being presented to me this way.
The ending is so crazy.
It's crazy. And
it's one
also,
of the craziest endings.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you that the things are robots.
Right.
I mean,
which most people misinterpret them as
Right.
aliens.
A lot of people
I
are like,
always
it's
thought
just
they were
aliens.
aliens until I was getting ready for this podcast,
Right.
and I was reading a couple essays, and someone said, "Well, most idiots thought they were aliens. They're actually evolved AI." And I was like, "Oh yeah, of course. That's why they're so stoked to find him."
Right, because it's like literally they
The
found
missing
like a
link.
Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, they found the missing link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people think they are aliens because they look like aliens
Because they're
they are tall,
blobby and-
skinny
right,
things.
exactly.
Yeah, and like that's what aliens look like.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
But when you see it and like the way they
Yeah.
share the info when they sort
Right.
of
Yeah.
touch
They make
each
their
other,
network,
Yeah.
their neural
that
network.
to me is the best. But it is interesting that they don't like put a point on it, you know, because I do think that baffled a lot of people.
and there's just the offhand reference to
I mean, it'd be weird if they were like, "We are robots."
Right.
there's the offhand reference to like the originals, like they were man-made, they
Right.
had
Right.
communication
Yeah,
with
yeah,
humans,
yeah.
you know, as opposed to see when I saw it the first time when I was 12, I don't think I could intellectualize it at all. I just knew, and it was sort of the same thing when I saw Synecdoche, where I was like, this is funneling into that fear that I've never been able to verbalize before.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it just kind of hit so specifically with, like, as a kid who was, like, alternatingly obsessed and terrified by love and death as, like,
Right.
abstract concepts
Yeah.
and could never fucking put it into words but would just stay awake at night with, like, this dread. This movie tapped into that, and it made it so frustrating when I was, like, a kid and everyone else was like, this movie's dumb, I laugh at it. And I couldn't explain why it was good other than just like, no, but it's good.
You couldn't make the intellectual argument. I think
Right.
one thing that's interesting about this movie to me is that it's scary. To me, it's like that feeling of dread that I had even before I really understood what was so dreadful about it, which is not the intellectual. I mean, it's just deep. Like, it goes so deep into the fathomless emptiness that defines the human condition,
Right.
and
Right.
love,
The
and
purposelessness
And
of
how
our
love is like an
emotions.
illness.
which
Love
is
like a
almost which is
curse.
like
Yeah.
below the level of an intellectual argument. And then, but then you can also be scared of it when you try to make an intellectual. Well, this is a movie about how all religion is a huge mommy substitute. It's not going to work, and people are so selfish. They just want their mommy to love them, even at the cost of all of humanity being destroyed.
Yeah.
That doesn't even register for them as long as they can make a cup of coffee for their mom, who will be dead in the morning.
Sure.
It is essentially structurally a one-night stand with your own mother. Which
Right.
is the next morning the relationship is gone and he just stumbles home or whatever's going to happen.
And he can only have her by killing her. That's the
Yeah.
other thing. That's the
Right.
craziest
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
about the
yeah.
fucking ending, which no one talks about.
Right.
Is they explain to him. They're like, we
yeah,
figured it
this
out. We
is
know
a
how to bring someone
one-shot,
back, but we
yeah.
remove them from the space-time continuum.
Right.
Like, DNA is part of the fabric of time.
Yeah.
She'll have never existed if you get to spend 24 hours with her. And he's like, yeah, I'll take the 24 hours. Like, he wants
I don't
to
know
have
if
her
she'll have
himself.
never existed. I don't think
That's
that's.
how
I think
I
they
kind of
snap
interpret
back.
it.
into
The specificity of,
the
well, we can
explanation.
bring her back, but it can only last for 24 hours. I mean,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
again,
It's a
that's
little
what's-
bit of a like
it's
ancient riddle
bonk-
or something.
Yeah, it's just like so bonk. Yeah, it's like when you hear about a myth from olden times, and it's like, well, and then he turned into a constellation, and he could only come out in the spring and the summer because his dog was lost. You know, it's like, why has this got to be so fucking
No,
specific?
but that's what I love about like Greek myths about like why freaking Persephone is stuck in hell for 6 months out of the year.
Yeah,
or whatever.
right. Yeah,
right.
it has that.
She ate those 6 pomegranates. Like, what if she? Anyway, go on.
Just the. the 24-hour thing again. It's you get the sense that Spielberg's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go for broke.
Yeah, right.
He can have her again, but it's only gonna. It can't. Like he could have easily made a movie. It's like, well, we're not aliens, we're robots,
Right.
and you're our favorite robot. We've been looking for you. Whatever you want. I want mommy. All right. Well, this is 2,000 years in the future. Here's a new mom, same DNA. It's essentially your mom. Go live in this house forever.
Sure.
Right? You could have that.
There could be that.
Spielberg's like, nah, I got to twist a few more screws here. So you can only have her for 24. I mean, it's like he's going crazy. I think this movie makes me think Steven Spielberg is a really interesting person.
Me too, because this is the script, right, that he created without one would imagine it's like the many, many layers of Hollywood filters that his scripts and lots of scripts go through,
and
right?
Even though I don't think I liked the movie as much as I do now, even when I saw it, I did come away being like, well, this is a dude who can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, sure.
Because
I mean, it's the
there's
premise
no
of our podcast,
fucking
right?
way this movie was made by committee with a bunch of studio executives being like...
It's true.
And that's a crazy thing that jumped out to me watching it this time is think of... I was struggling to come up with examples, okay? Think of other movies in the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years that have this level of world building and production design and intricacy, right, into the technology, the design of all the characters, the environments, and all of that, that is not in service of set pieces, because there are no set pieces in this movie.
Not really. No.
Right?
Well, there's one really lackadaisical chase sequence.
Yeah, one
feels really kind
half-hearted,
of
where they
listless.
get in the damn
My notes here
helicopter.
say listless chase sequence.
For like 90 seconds.
No one, and
Right.
like, this is the thing, like in Minority Report, which is his next movie, which is very, very devoted to like having its tech feel organic and like everything makes a certain sort of sense. Like, and this is like, they get in a damn helicopter thingy that's a copter.
Right.
They drive away. No one's going to just like flick some switch that's like, turn off the helicopter.
Right.
Like, is there no fail safe here?
Right.
And so they just drive, who cares? He doesn't care.
It's an aquacopter, right? What's he call it?
It's a amphibicopter.
Amphibicopter, yeah.
Right.
And it's, like, he doesn't want
When
you to
the
think about any
narrator
of this
says
stuff, right?
amphibicopter, it's so awkward and
Ben
clunky
Kingsley.
and specific.
Sir Ben Kingsley.
That's Ben Kingsley?
Yeah, and can you imagine him being handed the script and he's like, what's this word?
Amphibicopter.
Right.
I highlighted the word I
Right.
don't
You
understand.
sure you don't want me to just say the vehicle? It's like, no, it's an amphibicopter. It goes underwater and in the sky. Like, it means something. Say it.
Also, I mean, we should know, like, the cars in this movie are the dumbest design
I
car.
love
They would
them.
flip if you did a gentle curve, right? Like,
Yeah. I would say the production design has not aged well. And I wonder
would
if that's...
agree with
I would
So
agree, but it's fascinating.
I wonder
Yeah.
if that's deliberate because the world... First of all, the typeface that they use for the instruction sheet and the packaging is not looking good.
No, it's really bad packaging.
Right.
Oh, you mean her weird, like, overhead
the
projector slide?
transparency, the transparency sheet, that typography, and then the packaging of the David robots at
It's
the
a bad
end.
box.
Right, it's a horrible box.
Yeah, who wants a box that just shows you a silhouette
Yeah,
of
it
the
looks
box?
like a naked child is in there.
And then
yeah.
their house is very it doesn't it
house
looks
is
very
odd.
it looks very chintzy.
Yeah.
And I
I like the input. Well, we should try to approach it, but we should start with the freaking house anyway. But I like the idea, or at least that there's there's only a little of this going on at this point, right? Of
What do you-
this luxury living. That there's some like very, very narrow, almost like fake bubble of
Right.
we still live in the suburbs and
Yeah.
it's fine,
Right, right, right.
because the implication is like America's shrinking,
Doesn't
like the
collapse,
world
yeah.
is
yeah,
sort
but
of,
on the other hand, the Rouge City
right. Well,
is pretty fancy.
it's
I mean,
Yeah.
you
you
know,
sunk some money into that, but it's Sex City, right? Maybe it's just
That's
you
where
know,
the money's going.
Excuse me,
Ben Bott,
blank check and guest. Could I give you my thoughts because I just saw this movie for the first time?
Sure. Ben Bott, please relay thoughts.
So, having been exposed to the cinema for the first time in a post-Trump world, I derived enjoyment from seeing all the future violence and pain. Also, the end of human civilization.
Okay, Ben Bott.
Yes.
You connected because it was like a flight of fancy. It was like a thing that could never happen, right?
Oh no, it's going to happen.
Okay, Ben Bott.
don't explain the bit to him. Come on, Ben Bott knows.
Ben Bott, don't kill us, please, Ben Bott.
I won't.
No, the robots aren't going to kill us. We're going to kill ourselves, right? Isn't that the? And then all that's going to be left is us. That's what Jude Law says.
oh my God, is this? Could you have a reading of this movie where the final AI killed all humans, or does it have to be global warming and catastrophic climate
I
change?
think it's catastrophic. I don't know.
I think
mean,
you could have that reading.
Wouldn't that be amazing? That would take
I
it to the
think you
next
could
level of
have that
darkness.
reading. Yeah, that they're the further descendants of
Whatever
some kind of
generation of
robot
AI.
war.
Yeah.
Also, I love my mommy.
Thank you, Ben Bot.
All right, so the
Please
movie
commence producing.
the movie starts. The movie starts with this weird little prologue.
Mm-hmm.
As
It
well.
opens with the sound of waves over darkness.
True.
Orgo waves.
And you see the artificial intelligence crashes into it, and it says AI, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a funny title. But yeah, it's a William Hurt. Well, no, I guess there's some explanation.
Isn't there a little Ben Kingsley narration
yeah,
over the
the Ben
waves?
Kingsley, like the
Yeah,
world
the-
has ended,
right,
or,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, whatever.
Yeah.
Amsterdam, Venice, and New York City. Those are
Mhm.
the 3 cities we know we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a couple more.
And then we get the big hurt.
Yeah, the Big Hurt's in this one.
Hobby. Professor Hobby.
It's an odd name.
I love him so much. I think he's such a good actor. I know we've talked about him a couple
We
times
have.
on this podcast.
This was in his real dark career phase.
Yes. Yes.
William Hurt. He was, I mean, I guess Lost in Space was his last box
Big,
office
right.
player, but I mean, he hasn't, it's like 10 plus years since broadcast news, like, since
Yeah.
like
and this
he was a thing.
this probably seemed like, oh man, he's got like a choice supporting part in that Spielberg Kubrick movie. And then it didn't really, I think he's very good in it, but it certainly didn't boost
No, it was a
his signal
bit
at
of
all.
an afterthought.
Yeah. But yeah, it starts out with a monologue, which I kind of like when movies start like this. Like, I like when movies,
But they have like a thesis statement at the beginning.
I like that, but
Yeah.
also I like when movies submerge you with a character is peripheral. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to open with what is not the main character and fully, like force you into this environment where it's like, here's like 7 minutes of a guy who's got the and billing and a bunch of like executives who don't have character names.
Ken Long,
Yes.
he's in there.
Matt Winston.
Matt Winston's in there.
But it's just like, because
Clark Gray.
you've seen the trailers, it's about Haley Joel Osment as like a little boy.
Right.
And they're sort of talking about him. But it's just like, this isn't where this movie's going to live. We're going to put you in this place. This is like sort of a table setting. And then your story's going to start. It kind of feels to me, I mean, this movie is like a fairy tale. It's like an adult fairy tale.
Sure, that's certainly part of its conception, or at least that's built into the theme of the movie. Yeah, it is a bit of it's a picaresque journey. It's an episodic. He has little adventures,
Right.
Yeah.
that are all moral tales, except they're all sort of warped, I guess.
Right.
But like, it's much. I mean, have you guys read Pinocchio, the book Pinocchio?
Never read it, the original.
Okay, it's very, 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 very upsetting and dark. It's
Yeah.
it's a nasty book. I read it. I was obsessed with it as a child because it was so creepy, and it's very heavy on the morality. Like, it's like trying to imprint on you, like, you have to be a good little boy who
Right.
listens to his parents. But it's the same thing. He goes on these little adventures, and something horrible happens to him
Yeah.
each time, and he can't die because he's a puppet. So they like hang him from a tree. The thieves, the little animals.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he just hangs from the tree forever until someone finds him because he can't die.
That's how that book ends?
No, that's like in the middle of the
Oh,
damn book.
really?
It's a really no. At the end of the book, the blue fairy
Right.
turns him
Right.
into a real
Well,
boy.
yeah, of course. Right. Spoilers. Well, in the end, Pinocchio has the whole Pleasure Island thing, which is
Yes.
very similar to Rouge City. It's
Right,
like-
yeah, yeah.
right.
Which is
Yeah.
why I think Kubrick was obsessed with that idea. What do you make of the beginning, David? It's Hurt laying out this concept of like what
Well,
imbuing emotion into artificial intelligence.
I've always been really interested in artificial intelligence and are robots ever going to be people, and like, do robots deserve rights once they reach a certain level of intellectual or cognitive or emotional sophistication? And I think watching the movie, I think I wanted to see it because it's called AI, artificial intelligence. I was like, oh, it's going to be an action movie about basically philosophy of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hurt scene makes you feel like they're going to double down on that, but you really I don't think there's much in this movie about artificial intelligence, really. It's not really a philosophical movie about artificial intelligence. I
No.
feel like that's just the conceit for talking about.
It is not a complicated look at the sort of moral implications of making.
And it is more of a fantasy movie with sci-fi trappings than it is a science fiction movie. Like, once you
Right.
get past the
Whereas
initial
what-
table setting,
Right.
it becomes a lot more philosophical.
And like I said before,
Yeah.
there's not much attention paid to making everything the tech makes sense.
No, they're-
right? The
Right,
future makes
because
Totally
sense.
disinterested, it
Jude
feels
Law, yeah, I mean, I guess it gets into stuff about like.
But yeah, Jude Law's character has a personality, feelings, and emotions, and drive. Right?
Yeah.
He does have a lot of this.
Feels
stuff.
like, yeah. And that's one of the fundamental weird. One of the things that's so weird about this movie is, I could see people falling in love with Jude Law's robot. I could see people falling in love with Teddy. Like,
yeah, Teddy's pretty.
He's got
Teddy's a good-looking
adorable.
guy.
I mean, he seems at
He's got a lot of character in
it's
that
not an
furry
original
face.
point, but like relative to the humans in this movie, like
Sure.
I would much rather spend the rest of my life with Jude Law and Teddy than with Monica and Professor Hobby.
Yeah, and Monica's jerk husband.
Yeah, right.
Fuck that guy.
But David is so weak. Like the uncanny valley stuff is so bad with him.
Yeah.
It's like no one's ever gonna fall in love with you, dude. Like you're so
you want to
weird.
take him aside, like,
And-
come on, man,
well,
just
and-
back off, take it easy.
Right. But I feel like that's what I mean. And when you get into like the real deep stuff in the movie, it's like, well, every child is awkward, every human is awkward, and
Yeah.
we're probably all unlovable, like relative to a teddy bear with a heart of gold who's like a newfangled Jiminy Cricket. But there's just something about when you think about it on the level of like really just take it on the surface level. Okay, this guy's Professor Hobby's son died, so he does what any scientist would do. He builds an army of robots that are exactly like his son for other people to fall in love with.
Yeah, right.
He's like
yeah, yeah.
spreading his son
Yeah.
out into the world for everyone to love. And
Well, he had the best
there's
son. Yeah.
got to be a parallel somewhere in Western religious tradition. I can't think of it right now about a father figure sending his son out for all of humanity to fall in love with.
Like his
a
son's
sacrifice, but
like
I know
a
it's there.
dandelion, and he
I
sort
know
of waves
it's
it in
there.
the wind. Yeah.
I just don't have time to think of it right now. I can't quite put my finger on it.
I
But
think Scientology deals with that a little
Yeah,
bit, right?
totally,
Okay, that's
yeah.
what it is. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Scientology
So he-
has all the airplanes that were in the volcanoes that blew up, right?
Well,
and it's like all the
Thetans.
bits
Yeah,
came
yeah.
out of it.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of like that too. So Hobby's son Hobby had a son. His son's name was David. David dies.
Oh.
Hobby's like,
And his
well,
son
I
was
do
one of a
want to.
kind.
All right, I want to make a robot that people can fall in love with, and then because there's not a lot of babies around, and
We've been told like you can only have one child,
Right,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
and
yeah.
he sympathizes, one imagines, with the plight
Parent,
of the
right,
childless
yeah.
parent, right?
Right.
So he wants to provide something that would maybe replace it, I guess.
And then and this is where the stage setting gets so specific, and you think that the movie's going to be making an intellectual argument, which is he says, I want to. What does he say? He says, I want to make a robot that can love.
Right.
There's no reason. I'm just thinking as a business. As a business,
Right.
there is no
he
reason
could-
for the customer. There's a reason to tell the customer, yes, this robot's son actually loves you,
Right.
but there's no reason to build that into the robot. First of all, it doesn't really make sense to me that a robot could love, but putting that aside,
Right.
It's a burden.
there's no reason
well, that's the
for the
idea, right?
robot, in terms of user experience,
Yeah.
as the parent who needs a kid, there's no reason for that robot to actually love as long as it passes this weird emotional Turing test of this child is acting as if it loves me.
I'm feeling the love.
The marketing, yeah, of course we're going to say a robot that can love. But when I'm when I'm Professor Hobby hanging out with my scientists, goofing off, sticking pins in robots and telling them to take off their clothes, it's like, listen, we're going to tell them this robot can love. I don't fucking know if this thing can love. It's a robot. But the point
Right,
is,
and
like,
that's what
you've
Gigolo
set up
Joe
this.
is supposed to exude,
Right,
right? Like
exactly,
there's the
yeah.
imitator, the guy who sort of reflects you back at yourself.
And the scene with with his first client is so emotionally intimate.
Yes,
And
he
mirrors.
listens.
And he
he
mirrors
cares.
the imprinting thing because you notice when he places her on the bed, he has his fingers on the back of her neck,
That's
which is
true.
where Monica has put
Right.
her fingers on the back of. So it's
You
all this.
turn on the love.
Yeah,
love
right. So
button.
it's kind of like the Jude Law character is kind of undermines the Professor Hobby's obsession with making a robot that can love, and with David, this robot who. I feel like in the end,
He's
I can only
imbued
take
with-
this movie as an emotional movie because intellectually it just starts
There's too
collapsing
many
in on it.
holes,
It's just
sure.
there's so much going on, and you can't. I don't think you can have a single intellectual response to the arguments or the logic of this movie because it is really just churning up the deepest, darkest Freudian
Yeah.
stuff. It's not going to make sense.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah. It's like fairy tales where it's like we need to find a way to communicate to children these things that scare them.
Right.
So let's like use fantastical elements
Right.
and like wackadoo storytelling
Right.
to
Right.
get at some deeper truth that will not be understandable in didactic terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right,
the movie
right.
operates on that kind of logic.
But like, so I have my own.
But it's
read
a fairy
on this
tale for
movie.
adults.
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Is it a
Right.
fairy tale for adults? Like, is it trying to help you understand Like, what's it trying to help an adult understand?
Well, that's I think where this movie failed at the time of its release.
To me,
is
it doesn't
because
fail at all.
No, at the time of its release, I'm saying the reason why people didn't respond to it well at the time is because I think they went, oh, it's Spielberg doing sci-fi and the lead's a child. He's better at childlike wonder than anyone else.
Right.
He does these movies where kids and adults alike. The kids see it. The adults are brought back to their childhood. It's unifying.
Right.
And then he made this movie that's like not for anyone, and he's not trying to help anyone. He's exploring his own sense of mortality.
Right. And what's so awesome about it in terms of Spielberg is like with Elliot and E.T., like those kids are constantly having their mind blown and their eyes are opening up. And in this movie, David is so obsessed with getting his mother's love. He doesn't give a flying fuck if he's at a flesh fair murder circus.
He's not really taking it
if
in.
he's in Rouge City surrounded by all this decadence. He's so monomaniacal when it comes to his mother's love that he has no wonder. He's a completely boring.
Right. He just wants to be home in this boring apartment making coffee for mommy.
Right. And what's so sad is like, no mom is going to love such a boring ass kid. This kid doesn't care. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like,
go out in the world, learn some stuff.
Yeah, right. Like, have a learn how to have a conversation, you know? Like, so when your mom, you know, it's like, I had the craziest night last night, Mom. I went to the circus and they were tearing up all these robots and I got really scared.
They almost poured acid on me.
Yeah, right, exactly. But it's love without, the thing that's so bleak about the movie is, or maybe this is the moral is like a love. You know, it's like love is active. Love is a verb, right? It's not just a state of being that once you achieve it, then you're in love and then you have fulfillment. Like this kid's life is so empty. He literally doesn't care that all of humanity has been destroyed. You know what I mean?
He doesn't
like,
really get it. I mean, I like the way he says, and we're jumping ahead. I have a lot of things to say, but when he's like, maybe it'll be like that day in the Amphibicopter.
Right.
It'll last for 2000. That's how he can think about it, right? He has these. So one thing that's interesting about it is like there's a lot of tenderness in this movie from other robots, like Gigolo Joe, like Teddy a lot, because Teddy is David's protector, right? And he really goes above and beyond to keep this kid happy.
I need to find David. Have you seen David?
Where is
David?
To David?
Yeah, he's taking me to David.
I love that he gives Teddy the least appealing voice in the world.
He gives Teddy the voice of like a cigar shop owner from like 1920s.
Where's David? I'm looking for David.
Yeah.
Jack Angel is the voice actor. He was like a veteran voice actor.
Voice of Chunk in Toy Story 3.
Oh, okay. Which one's Chunk?
He's like the rock guy who's got the two faces. One's angry and one's happy.
Oh, yeah.
He's maybe got 3 lines. I know the entire voice cast of the Toy Story.
We know you do. So part of, to me, I love religious shit, and to me, robot stories are always about, you know, often about humanity trying to talk to God, right?
Yeah.
And like, the horrifying thing about all religion is that religion is trying to answer is why did you make me, right? Like, why do I exist? And so like when she imprints on him, she's making him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Hobby has a role in that too, in his own fucked up role.
Well, it's nature versus nurture. Like they're each one half of that.
But she's activating him for this supposedly two-way connection. Is the
right,
idea that's
right.
Yeah.
But of course, like you're saying, how on earth could she like? She obviously feels like pity for him, and she's attached to him, but she doesn't love him. How could she love? He's bizarre. He's like a pet that keeps fucking up, right? He's sort of like a dog, like almost, right? Like all of their arcs together are just him making a mistake and her being like, I get it. Look, you're a weird robot. Like, you know, I'm not going to hold you responsible.
Well, I think the bigger thing is that
like, does she love him? I guess
she's in love with being a mother, and she misses that sensation. And just being able to go through the motions with him is starting to activate that thing in her. I mean, you see even right before she activates him that she's still creeped out by him.
Right.
But that she's feeling fulfilled in that way. Like that itch is being scratched, and she needs that because at the beginning of the movie, she's like a broken person. Like she has no reason anymore, you know?
Yeah, something about the imprinting also feels weird to me.
I want to find the words.
Oh, I have them in
down?
I have them in my notes.
Oh,
Are you ready?
What note taking?
Get Ben Bot ready because I'm going to imprint him on you, Griffin. Are you ready?
BenBot activate.
Yes.
Okay.
Here we go.
Put my finger in the small of his neck.
Cirrus, Socrates, Particle, Decibel, Hurricane, Dolphin, Tulip, Griffin, Ben, Griffin. Now say it. You're my mommy. Say it.
You're my mommy.
Okay.
Boom. There you go.
Thank you, BenBot.
Can I come hug you?
No, BenBot, you have to produce the show.
What did those words
Just keep
mean,
engineering, BenBot.
Okay.
And you know, I watched this. Go ahead. I watched this with
sorry.
Joanna, and she asked the question like, why doesn't dad imprint? Like, why is this a one-on-one thing, right? Which is
Right.
like it's just sort of inherent to the.
Well, and
role.
what's incredible is as soon as she imprints him,
Yeah.
and he hugs her, and then in the next scene, the dad is so over this kid and wants
He's
him
like, all right.
so far out of the house, and she's so into him.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a very kind of weirdly reduct.
Freudian.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
heavily,
Totally.
but why? This is what I
whereas
don't
before,
understand.
that scene where he's like, change me, and she's like, no,
Right.
no, thank
yeah,
you.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
And that shot of him in the mirror, in the glass door where David like turns to look at her, and you see his face
Yeah, it's all fractured.
refracted.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my god.
But it's very Oedipal because it's like his love is so extreme beyond the average love that that a child has for a mother.
Right.
Because it's like he's designed only to love a mother. And so that's like, I think, a threat to the father once he's activated, which is just like, okay, this isn't just like a kid who needs his mom. This is a kid whose entire raison
No,
d'etre.
he is obsessed with her.
And he'll never grow out of it. That's
Right.
all he will ever
yeah, well,
be.
that's the
And
real
why-
creepy thing about David. Is he can't grow up. I mean,
Right.
Right.
That's sort of the perversion
Right.
of childhood. Like to
You're
the
stuck
extreme.
forever.
Right.
It could be a year. It could be 2,000 years.
And so that I love that man playing God stuff with fucking Frankenstein onwards, right? Like that thing of like, yeah, they did this thing for a purpose they thought they understood, but then like they didn't consider the implications of imbuing consciousness on something, right?
But also for a filmmaker who's known for like being able to create a sense of childlike wonder, and not just in his movies, but the stuff he produced and the fucking cartoons and everything, and was like people had complained was infantilizing pop culture. To make a movie about how being a child forever is a curse
Right.
is
Right.
fascinating.
And that the only wonder in the movie is horror wonder.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like,
Right?
you see this Spielberg face that we talk about a lot. This sort of the long shot of someone reacting to something before you see it, when they're looking at the moon rising,
Right.
which is this gorgeous image that's,
Right.
of course, like a nightmarish image, and things like that. Or his obviously, that freaking blue fairy statue he loves so much.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Haley Joel is definitely like the most haunted
He's
Spielberg
terrific,
kid.
we
He's
should
great
say.
in it.
I
but-
think it's a really wonderful.
No, it's
Performance.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He doesn't blink at any point in the movie. Like
to do a
he
lot of
was very
underwater
committed.
shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he has this weird waxy makeup.
I would. What do you think his experience? How do you think Spielberg explained to him what the movie was about?
It's
Or
a-
do you think he did or didn't, or it's just like you just need to act like a weirdo?
But that was the thing with him at the time. I mean, you have to remember, like, that buzz was like, after Sixth Sense, they were like, this seems like the kid gets it. Like, they
Right.
didn't just trick a good performance out of him. It seems like he's getting it. And then when he would do interviews and stuff, he wasn't, like, precocious, where it felt like a trained monkey. He was just this very intellectual kid.
Uh-huh.
He just seemed like one of those grown-up kids who like wore slacks and New Balance and
Yeah.
button downs,
Right,
and like,
right.
seemed like at a party he might be like at a dinner party he might still be there, and like
Uh-huh.
he'd be able to like make
Right,
conversation
right,
with the girl. And then I think he hit teenagehood, and it was like
It was
a
weird. And he's-
disaster.
Right, and he's like never been able to play an adult convincingly, which
Right.
is so bizarre.
Huh.
But his father, because he always plays like slackers and sort of
He
like
plays like gross sort of side guys now.
right,
Huh.
yeah. But he plays very like infantilized kind of men now. His father, I think, was like an acting teacher,
Mhm.
and so it just feels like he had this
Oh.
real sense of like breaking down character psychology.
Yeah.
But it never felt like he was parroting stuff. Like he actually got it.
But what's so amazing about
Oh, can I
His
just say something that I just
yeah.
found on his Wikipedia page that is a fascinating nugget? His father said that when Osmond was learning to speak, his father deliberately avoided using baby talk when communicating with his son.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He imprinted him only with real words.
Go ahead. Then.
Well,
Sorry.
what's awesome about his performance is he was a child. The actor was
sure,
a child.
yeah, he was 11
playing
or 12.
playing a fake child built by adults as an idealized child,
Right.
who the viewer has to come to recognize is a sociopath,
Yeah.
Sure.
right?
Yes, yeah.
And subvert every innocent. I mean, all the famous shots of him like laughing out of the blue, and it's like really
Yeah.
horrifying and all that stuff. But even the more subtle stuff, like the intensity of his desire to be loved,
Yeah.
right. But that is a synthetic. I think it's a synthetic desire.
Well, no,
right. I mean,
because everything's about, and like the thing, his he copes like in a way that's supposed to manipulate you. Like when Frances O'Connor, the mom, what's her name, Monica,
Yeah.
is going to leave him in the woods. The like snap from his normal sort of pliant,
Right,
like,
right.
what are we doing, Mommy?
Right,
I'll lay
right,
out the
right,
blanket for you.
right, right.
To like utter
Total
devastation.
panic. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Is so instant. I mean, he plays it very, very well. Like he makes it feel like it's a switch has been flipped.
And again, with the robots at the end, with the hair, when he's
Right.
like gets so indignant because
Right.
it's a survival thing.
Right.
I mean, that's like his nourishment is he needs love, and if you threaten to take that away from him, he goes into like warrior mode to get what he needs.
Yeah,
You-
I'm starting to think this movie is intellectually incoherent. Because,
Intellectually incoherent.
yeah.
Go on.
Well, the only reason he wants to be a real boy is because he has told himself that is the only way Monica will love him.
Yeah, that's just
Right?
a logical thing he thinks, like a logic leap of logic he makes. It's like, well, what if I was a real boy? Because he thinks the problem is that.
The
right?
tragedy is, if he had just acted a little more normally.
Right. If he just had a
And
little
I
chill.
will say this was a huge problem in the movie where I was like, come on, guys. If the techs, after they have the spinach eating contest and his face starts to melt, and then they open him up and start sucking the spinach out in front of the family?
Yeah,
No.
a little weird.
Do that off-site.
Yeah.
Because how are you ever
Don't
going to...
remind them that he is
Right.
a robot.
And then he's
Yeah.
like, don't worry, Mommy, it doesn't hurt. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you just lost her right there.
And there's that
Because
shot.
that's really crazy.
She's holding his hand, and then she lets his
Yeah,
hand go.
right,
and his
exactly.
hand's just sort of hanging in the air.
So if he had been...
Oh.
She could have... The whole point of Hobby's business was... We're going to program a robot to love a human.
Right.
What that means, we never really learn. But once that's done, yeah, humans are going to be loving robots all day long. So he doesn't have to be real in order to be loved. He just has to be better at acting like a normal kid.
Sure,
you know what
they
I
don't
mean?
give
Like,
him a good sense of acting.
But
Maybe that's the problem.
Right. Gigolo Joe is the opposite
don't
side
like
of that.
the
Right,
Where he has
right.
no real love, but he knows exactly how to make people feel
and
like
people
they're
are
loved.
right, and people are falling in love with him.
Right.
Right.
Because Gigolo Joe's a smooth operator.
So that's what I don't understand logically. There's no. I'm really
Are you
getting
just
down to the
trying
level of
understand the
engineer-
logic of Hobby's decision of like his creation.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's what the movie's about, right? I was yelling this, at someone recently when we were talking about the movie. Like, why do humans exist? We're stupid. We destroy everything.
Right.
We act irrationally because we are imbued with all these emotions,
and
right?
selfishly.
Yeah, we act selfishly. We act, what is love except like something that ties you to someone who might hurt you and or die and or but also they're a good thing, but you know what I mean? Like there's all this irrationality. That's why we get angry at God and say like, why did you cast us out of the Garden of Eden? Right? Like, isn't that?
Well, I also think this is a big Garden of Eden movie because I think the difference between Gigolo Joe and David is that like Gigolo Joe hasn't bitten the apple and David has.
What?
That
right.
Gigolo Joe knows everything and understands it intellectually, but isn't burdened with having to feel the existential weight of it. He understands it, whereas David has this thing that he cannot reconcile.
It's
And that thing is the
purposelessness.
need to be loved by his mom.
Yeah, and,
Well, no,
and
but,
just
like-
the depth of feeling and longing and loneliness.
He has an equation that can't be balanced, right? Which is like how you might think about emotion, right? It's like, obviously it's extreme, but like he can't be fulfilled because he's been imbued with something that you can't easily fulfill, right? I don't know. And like obviously then there's this idea that he's being seeded with something that grows, and then when we meet this consciousness many thousands of years later, it's evolved into something more recognizable.
But they're
Right?
very
Like he's sort of like
they're very
caveman.
analytical when they talk about everything, though. You know,
They are. I mean, they're
The
robots.
future AI, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
I
But
think yes.
they are compassionate towards him. They're like
100%.
deeply compassionate
Yeah.
towards him.
Yeah, they are. That's
Which-
true, actually.
Which you don't
In fact,
see,
that's interesting because those robots, I mean, if you're just looking at how you would react to all the AI or the robots in this movie, those are like the only characters in the movie that feel like sensitive.
Yeah, they're
thoughtful,
sensitive, and they
empathetic.
try to interact with him as the Blue Fairy as well.
Right,
Like
yeah,
they
yeah,
try to
yeah,
they
yeah.
try to meet him on his level.
Right.
They get it. Whereas the other robots, I mean, Teddy, like I said, is compassionate in a weird sort of way, but in a
Right.
more
It's easier to,
blocky kind
right,
of a
it's like,
way,
okay,
yeah.
that's his algorithm. He has to serve his
he
master.
is
Like,
nice, right?
Hey, Griffey,
Yes, Benbot.
I have a question about Teddy.
Okay, Benbot, commence question.
Great. So, why doesn't he tell jokes where the setup is, this is a thing that is happening, and that reminds me about this other thing that happened another time?
I don't get Benbot's bit.
Benbot, are you? Do you think that Teddy is the character from Ted 2 and the Ted movie?
Yes.
Okay, so Benbot, this is a different Teddy.
Looks similar.
Looks similar. Animation's about at the same level.
I would say this Teddy is much more.
This is not a Seth MacFarlane Teddy, Benbot.
Why didn't we see the Teddy fuck a human.
Okay, because Benbot, that's a different
Does
franchise.
he use like an apparatus in those movies?
Yeah, he
have
fucks her with a
sex?
parsnip.
Okay.
It's the
Ugh,
worst
are
joke
you
in the
serious?
movie. He says out loud, "I fucked her with a parsnip." Okay, Benbot.
Funny part.
Benbot, cease laughing.
Okay.
Yeah, that movie should go die in a fire.
I've never seen it. I saw like 20 minutes of Ted 2 on HBO once, and I wasn't fond of it.
Yeah. This is my rationalization for all that stuff. This sort of Gordian knot we're trying to untangle here. I think Professor Hobby wanting to imbue a robot with love, which is an abstract concept, and it's like how do you
Right,
define this
right,
fucking thing,
Right.
is just like man's folly, right?
Right.
Yes, I agree.
It's
Okay,
just that
right,
he's
yeah.
accomplished so much, and it's like the uncanny valley. That's the thing he knows they haven't done. What's the gain of that? Will it
Right.
feel any different from the human side? I don't
No.
know, but that's the thing he
Right,
wants to
right,
try to.
Right.
Like the fact that when he stabs the woman in the hand, she feels the emotional response he wants, and she feels the physical response she wants, but she knows it's because of that.
Right.
And he wants it to just be an organic, innate process rather than a calculation, right?
Right.
So that's why that happens. But the thing is, David is programmed only to love, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Gigolo Joe is like programmed to respond and react to.
It's the difference between being programmed to love and being programmed to be lovable.
Right. David is programmed to have love
Right.
and programmed to never have that end. Which is like, you know, it's the classic thing of like, oh, wow, you know, he's way too into me. I'm freaked out now.
Yeah, right.
Right.
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
like
He has no
David-
chill.
Yeah,
He's
yeah, yeah.
David has
thirsty.
no chill.
Thirsty.
He's
David's,
very thirsty.
David's a fucking walking 11-year-old 60-pound thirst
Right.
trap.
Right.
Yeah, he's
yeah.
Right? And so that love is terrifying to her, which is why she's freaked out by him, because he's operating only based off of that.
Wait, is that what a thirst trap is?
A thirst
Or
trap,
is she not the? I don't know what thirst trap actually means.
thirst trap is when you're like putting out the bait, you want people to be thirsty. You're making it known, you know?
Yeah, I thought that it's like she's kind of the thirst trap. You know,
Jude Law is
Jude
Oh,
Law's
Jude Law's a
thirst
real
trap.
thirst trap.
Yeah.
with his
So-
soft shoe dancing in the puddles.
But I think, yeah, I think the thing is that they program that into him without any sense of how that would actually play out. As often happens in technology. It's like, this should
Right,
work, and then you
right,
make it
right.
and you're like, oh, we didn't realize that
Well,
if
then-
this, then that.
I
Right.
like that when we do meet Professor Hobby again, you think like finally his salvation, right? They can figure
Right.
this out for him, you know.
Right.
And he instead is just like, you know, my son was one of a kind. You're really interesting. It's crazy how you're doing all
You're
this shit you're doing.
first of a
we
kind.
did not see this coming. Anyway,
Right.
I'm going to go get everyone. I'll be
Yeah.
gone for 20 to 50
You
minutes.
want to go to a boardroom meeting?
So
Why don't they fucking turn him off or something? I mean, I guess
Yeah.
you can't, but
But I think it is that, like, you know, there are most movies are about love in one way or another, right? And love is like the most dominant and sort of powerful and cathartic human emotion. And Spielberg's an emotional filmmaker, and he's making a movie about the curse that is love.
right, but it's a fragment of love. Like they haven't fully understood it, I think. It's
Well,
a more of a devotion, right?
Yes.
Like it's more of a
Well, it's a child's like understanding of love
Right.
where you have these feelings and you don't know how to intellectualize them. And that's the problem, is that he is not able to intellectualize anything. He just needs a place to put this thing that he has.
And
you
there's
know?
like, you know, these
Yeah.
weird moments where his love sort of takes the form of obedience, right? Like what does he want to do except sort of serve her? Except he wants to serve her emotionally. But like he can only do it by kind of acting out the emotions of being a child. Like, you know, there's just so many weird disconnects to
Yeah,
what he's giving her and what I think they want him to give her, or, right? Or what like a substitute child could actually do.
Well, he's like this incomplete line of code.
He has a sense of wonder. Like he wants to
Yes.
hear about Pinocchio. He wants to, right? Like, you know, there are things that he likes watching them eat food. He likes like he likes it, and he says he likes it, and you believe him. But at the same time, like, you know, all he can do is sort of mirror and like
Yeah.
be nice, be helpful, right? You know, I don't know. He
Yeah,
has
well-
no like initiative or drive. Like he doesn't
because-
do anything a kid does, which is like behave really rationally. And I don't know. I mean, there's that John Mulaney joke that I love about like, you know, he wished someone had asked him as a kid why he did the things he did. Where it's like, why did you put this firecracker in this carton of eggs? And he would have said, like, I'm hungry, I'm horny, and I'm full of rage. And
Right.
I don't know where to direct that, so that's why I did this. Like,
But David essentially has one emotion, right? And everything else stems out of that. Like when he has fear, it's fear of not being loved, right? That's the
or
only
being hurt.
Right, that's the only sort of driving force he has. So it's like he's an incomplete equation.
Yeah.
and he just needs to keep on throwing shit at the wall to try to get back what he wants, which is
Right.
he's never going to get back what he wants. But
Right.
the only
Right.
way you could ever complete David's line of code successfully is to make a mommy robot that loved him as unconditionally, and they could just infinite feedback loop each other.
Sure.
Which
right.
is
Really?
what, right. Which is, I guess, kind of what they do in the final scene.
It's
in the
kind of what they
movie.
want. I think it's what
build
they
a
want to do.
simulacrum of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
this
no,
movie
that is,
makes no
no,
fucking
you're
sense.
right. That is what they give him at the end, right? They give him a Monica, but she's free of all human burden, right?
And
like,
she has
doesn't
no
have to worry about
memory,
her son,
right.
or her husband,
And she
or
loves
the
everything he
world.
does.
And so, but then that's another thing that's so crushing about the movie is like, well, you know what, kid? It's not really Monica.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
You know?
right, that
Because
he gets what he wants.
in
but
this
it's all
Monica
wrong.
world, like the real Monica has a husband and another son, and that informs who she is, and that's
Right.
who you originally wanted to love you. And now you just have this half-roofied zombie, you know,
Right.
like
I mean, and I've always read the movie as he's dying at the end of the movie, like that his purpose has sort of been achieved.
so neither of them will wake up.
No, that and it's because they say like for the first time he dreamt,
Right,
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 like that, you know,
right.
like that it's over, that like the
Yeah.
feedback loop has been closed finally. But yeah, like that's why I don't get, although I understand like the idea that it's a happy ending. It's not. It's a sad ending. It's a very sad ending.
I don't even know if it's sad. I just feel like I guess it's sad implies though some human element to it.
Sure.
And I find
It's a distressing ending, maybe.
yeah,
almost,
distressing.
you know,
I think it's
sort of-
disturbing.
yeah,
I think it's extremely,
disquieting.
really disturbing.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think it's like a Twilight Zone episode. It's like a be careful what you wish for thing where people talk about wanting to have this
Right,
like
right, right,
connection
right.
to their Spielberg-y
Right.
childhood of like the
Right.
sense of love driving you and not having to bring adult analysis into stuff. And he's like, that would be a fucking nightmare. Like you'd be
Right.
trapped
well,
in a hellscape.
it's
Sure.
it's
And
like
the
what Teddy
ending-
says when he says we are in a cage.
Yeah.
When they're trapped under the Ferris wheel in the amphibicopter, and he's so happy because he's just going to stare at the blue fairy until
Teddy
he
is
becomes
so
real.
deadpan
and
about it.
Teddy's like, fuck this. This really sucks, dude.
Right.
Like we're in a cage.
Like you
will break.
have to sort of
Right.
kill the child inside of you partially in order to be functional. Because if you try to remain a child living in the world will destroy you.
All right.
And if you try to have your love just like exist unbridled without any chill, it will destroy you.
And
you know?
also, if your only goal is to have somebody love you, like you're going to be impossible to love.
You're unlovable.
and
Yes.
you are going to not even be fully human.
Yeah.
you know, like
It's effed up. All right.
it's really crazy.
I want to get. I'm just gonna. We
breeze through the plot.
we need to move forward. But do you like the performances of the pair? Frances O'Connor, who never happened. She was
No.
supposed to happen. Right
She was in
around now.
Bedazzled like the year before this. And
Yeah,
she was
she was in
right.
Mansfield Park. I mean, she's pretty
Right.
good. Monica. She plays.
Oh,
Monica,
right,
you know,
okay.
I like her. She's very selfish at the end there. You know, like
Yes.
when she makes that decision. I
Yeah.
like she sells that well. Like that she knows she fucked up. Like she knows she like probably shouldn't have, you know, turned this stupid kid's like love emotion on or whatever.
The imprinting.
But she's
Yeah.
too much of a coward to
Yeah,
just
have him
burn
cry.
him up.
Right.
Yeah, like so.
She's it's a nicely prickly performance.
Yeah, and
You know?
Sam Robards is he's an okay
I
jerk.
think he's fine.
He's the dad.
He feels a little one-dimensional to me.
Yeah.
There's even like at the beginning, he's got to make a meal out of explaining the robotics to her. They give him like a big, like half a page dump of exposition about the technology, and he kind of can't make that sing. He's Lauren Bacall and Jason Robards' son, right?
He is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But he was also, I mean, he didn't have as much buzz to make it happen, but I think certainly getting this big of a part in a Spielberg movie seemed like it was going to push him, and it didn't happen for him either.
But he has to play
He's a good Broadway actor.
I mean, he has to play
An asshole.
right.
Yeah, it's not a
He's
pretty
playing a human
petty
in this movie,
asshole,
which
yeah.
means by extension you're playing an empty shell,
right,
a
right.
monster.
It's a pretty underwritten
The
role.
kid, Jake Thomas, is like too kid for me. He doesn't quite hit for me.
Oh, see, I like it because he's too kid.
He's
Like, I would
very
hate
kid.
that performance in a different movie. I think for this movie, you need someone who's acting so
I
much
do
like
like
a movie
his little
shit.
leg braces.
I do. Too.
Yeah, his little plastic things.
I like that they're kid colored. Like,
Right,
They
yeah,
look
yeah.
like they're for a
Yeah,
kid.
yeah,
Like, let me
right.
cheer you up about your paralysis or whatever the hell it is.
Lime
happened to
green.
you. What do you think of the scissors scene? That's the only other thing. Because, like, that's the thing where when you're watching it, you're like, why the fuck would he do this? Like, surely there's some piece of his
Yeah,
code.
that does feel right.
But, I mean, I think Spielberg is trying to illustrate, like, whatever you think about, like, laws of robotics, right? Like, they've fucked them up by making this weird thing.
Right, because the
Like,
love overrides every
right,
other
like,
command.
It's,
Yeah.
Right.
it's messing things up. But, of course, like, why the hell would he... It's, like, it's almost too obvious a sort of situation that you could take the wrong way.
And he's got that sort of
he's literally a
Hitchcock
creepy
shot.
kid
Yeah.
standing over your
Right.
Well, and when you literally have her like toss over in bed so that her eyeball is right next to the
And
blade,
she's
it's
in
like
her,
you're
like-
milking it a little bit, Stevie.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I don't know.
but you got to get that strand. You know, you got to get that strand of hair, that lock. Other performances. I mean, it's like William Hurt's really good in it in a small
Jude
role.
Law is fantastic.
Oh, Jude
in
Law
this.
rules. Yeah, we should talk about Jude Law.
Well, no, we're moving. So yeah, all
Okay.
right. So then he escaped. I mean, he's evicted. He's
Right.
made to go to the woods,
Yeah.
Right.
and you immediately cut to these things. You know, like he and these other poor, sad, abandoned robots, who also have a purpose, right? I mean, I guess it's only to survive, but like going to like the mountains of robot garbage and
Right.
plugging their like hands and faces on.
Blank check host David, could I speak on that?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Benbot.
You have
I'm
to
glad
commence one
that
time.
with substantially less land on the planet, they're still dumping garbage in the woods.
Benbot, I issue you 10 comedy points.
Thank you.
What do you guys think of the Flesh Fair, the Rising Moon, Brendan Gleeson?
I think all that stuff is boring. I mean, I understand they have to have it to have something dynamic happen.
I
but,
would also say this is maybe the most troublesome part of the movie. I don't know. I do
I would
like a lot of it.
Agree. I think they're interesting ideas. I
Yeah.
think it goes on for way too long.
It does go on for a little too long.
And I mean, this is actually
the thing I like the most is not so much the very obvious thing where the crowd turns on
Yeah.
Brendan Gleeson,
right.
but before where the guy who runs the Flesh Fair, like
The dad whose daughter is like, I think there's a little boy in this cage. Right.
and like that he admires like the craft of it so much that I don't know, like there's something I like that philosophical difference that plays out between him and Gleason.
sure.
Where
Right.
Gleason is more like, I mean, you almost kind of know what he means, where he's like, this is fucking insane
Right.
that someone would make this.
Right.
I'm
like,
now twice as motivated
This
to
is
kill
a
it.
nightmare.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
why would you do, and the other
No, Gleason's argument, Gleason actually makes
some
the
decent
most
points.
the most
Yeah, I don't
compelling
know why-
intellectual argument about why this is all so disturbing. It's like,
I don't
yeah,
know
they're
why
going to
you-
start making robot kids so that we don't even have our own kids. Like, this is
Doesn't he also sort of
horrible.
imply that it's maybe a robot for pedophiles? Doesn't it go like probably some sick fucking billionaire? I feel
I
like
don't
there's
know.
one line that makes it sound like it's maybe a sexual
I've never
thing.
thought of it that way, but I mean, it's not the. I mean, the Nightmare of the Flesh Fair, I guess, is more like how it's playing out.
Sure.
I remember, especially at the time, which was like the Bush era, it felt maybe too loaded because they're like a NASCAR crowd. Like it's too on the nose.
pretty red state.
It's very
Yeah.
red state. They all have
I
like
agree.
cowboy hats, and they're all
Grunge.
like,
It's a monster truck.
Yeah,
90s rock, 90s rock
full
band is playing.
90s,
Oh, God.
new metal band,
Yeah, yeah.
essentially.
Future
Yeah,
Kid
totally.
Rock is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Future Kid Rock.
I love watching like movies like this, and when they do that shot of like the weird kind of like Gwar Megadeth like costumed metallic armor guy, just imagining Steven Spielberg have to go in the office and it's like, so here are the concepts for
Right.
the metal band. Like there was a day where that was like for 45
here
minutes.
Here are the Dayglow shark bikers.
Right. Like that's what he had to sign off on those
He
things.
was like, no, this is good.
I
This
think
is
the
great.
cod piece should be sharper. I really like the moon thing. I like that inversion,
too.
especially because of how much that's part of like Spielberg's iconography with E.T. and the Amblin logo.
Oh, right.
To make
Yeah,
it into
yeah.
this like sense of dread.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true.
So I love that reveal, and then once I think the sort of capture is kind of interesting. I mean, I love the sort of just like the moonlit, dark kind of silhouettes of all these different robots running away. Once I get to the Flesh Fair, it gets a little on the nose.
It's a little much.
I think
I like the robots. Like I like all
That's
the
what I was gonna say.
abandoned little guys.
Yeah,
you know,
looking for their parts in the
And
pile and stuff.
You know, but more
Yes.
like when they like, it's like here's a nanny bot who
Right.
got too creepy or too
Right.
old or whatever. Like
Right.
here's a weird war robot who's
Right.
I like
Yeah.
all those little guys.
I love
Chris Rock. I don't know if we needed him.
He goes a little too hard with like the voice cameos in this movie. I do like that. I feel like in a lot of movies with robotics, there is a uniform robotic style.
Oh sure,
And
right.
in
It's
this-
all right. It's all like the old modes of the old fashioned is the
Right.
But not
yeah.
only different
That guy who's
generations.
like, I was Times Mecca of the Year.
75 years
he's got
ago.
like weird
Right.
spaghetti
Yeah,
arms.
yeah, yeah.
But not only are there like, okay, clearly these are different generations, but also like, well, different companies would make robots in different ways.
Yeah, it's like phones.
Yeah, right,
Right.
exactly. Which
Yeah.
I like. I love that. It's like, okay, these are like clearly mechanical robots that have human features. These are ones that have human flesh
Mhm.
over a mechanical skeleton.
Sure.
Here's one where it's a TV screen. Like,
Right.
all the different levels of that. I do think this is a part of the movie where Spielberg's reluctance to turn the gears and do any sort of Spielberg set pieces actually is a detriment to the movie.
Yeah, you almost wanted to have a little more fun. at
Because
this
there's
point.
no tension,
It's so
because
grim.
immediately the girl notices him there, and then just becomes a conversation while this massacre is happening in the background.
Yeah.
But there's no sort of like daring escape. There's no like, is he going to get out in time?
Well, there is Teddy.
Yeah,
Teddy
Right.
Teddy
running
being
around,
shot.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's just kind of like a bunch of people talking while awful
There's-
shit happens in the background.
Yeah, there's not a lot of dramatic tension.
There's not.
to this movie.
I like looking
Like,
at the robots.
I mean, like action-wise, like
yeah.
But,
there's not a lot
but
of
now,
threat, I guess.
isn't that appropriate given that according to the logic of this, maybe not though. I mean, they might as well just be burning toasters, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these robots are not. Are the robots at the Flesh Fair? Do they have artificial intelligence? Are they deserving
They have some, right?
our
I mean,
respect?
Well,
they
some of
don't
them
wanna
seem
die.
Yeah, some of them seem to have a lot of fear. But then, like the au pair robot,
but they don't resist, as we're told.
Right.
Like, and that's what the woman in the crowd says when David resists.
Right.
He's like, they
It
never
says
plead for their lives.
Right. Robots don't. Mechas don't plead for their life.
Right.
I think is what she says.
Right.
But
Right.
it's
and
a weird delineation because like the Chris Rock robot is like cracking jokes, but he seems scared.
Right.
You
It's
know,
true.
like he's
Right.
like, "Oh, come on, man, you don't." Have to
There's
do
a
this."
lot
Like,
of.
It's a little
muddy
blurry about.
consistency.
It's,
yeah.
it's a little blurry about what is actually going on in these robots' brains.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, like you get to the nanny robot, who I think is like the most striking piece of imagery in the whole movie. For whatever reason, that always really stuck with me with the face and then all the gears behind it, and especially once the face starts melting off.
Right.
But her programming so clearly is based in just nurturing
Right,
and caring for
yeah.
her child.
Yeah.
That even when she's being melted off, she remains a totally cool, calm, and collected.
I wish
face.
there was more of that because that is very interesting, and it would have played up this tension or this synchronicity between the roles that humans identities, whether it's professional or personal, and how those identities are sustained through trauma, or you know what I mean, like. The
Yeah.
nanny robot, I feel like is interesting, like you say, because she can't freak out. Nannies are paid to not freak out.
Right.
Right.
They are
Right.
to calming. Yeah. They're
Right.
like they keep the kids, feeling safe. Right.
Like the thing
Right.
that's simultaneously really interesting and really frustrating about this movie is that it kind of feels like what he's implying is that there are not laws of robotics in this movie. That like every robot's different,
Right.
and that they function in different ways, different purposes by different companies, and there aren't these overriding rules of like, So the pleading for the life thing, it doesn't feel like that's like, well, we all know that legally robots don't plead for their lives.
Right.
It's just we don't see that. And I think the other element to that is, even if they plead for their lives, the Chris Rock one is sort of joking about it, and it feels like it's just like, well, he's programmed to do that. The love element to David makes it feel more palpable. Like that's the whole thing is, for whatever reason, humans respond differently to David. They see him in the cage and they go, that has to be a real boy. And even after he scans him, he's like, what the fuck's going
Why
on
would
here?
Right.
you do it? What's the
Right.
purpose?
And
of
it's
this?
not just
Yeah.
the level of external craft, because he looks very human, but so does the woman in
He
William
still looks
Hurt's.
waxy.
Right,
you
right.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just something there. There's like a terror in his eyes,
Right.
which gets
Yes.
into like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the different, like what makes a good actor versus a bad actor. Like something just seems believable or it doesn't, you
Right.
know? And this kid is just like the best actor they've ever seen.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
Yeah.
I get that's part of it.
Yeah.
Although, if you have him at your home, he might walk in on you in the bathroom. Like,
Yeah.
he's not that chill.
No chill.
Do you guys believe in true artificial intelligence? Do you think that'll ever happen?
I can't wrap my mind around it. I
Really?
really can't. Like, I can't conceive of it.
I think
Really?
it will.
You
I
do?
try not to think about it too much because it freaks me out. Like if I try to actually run through what would need to happen and the logic of it, it freaks me out. But I kind of just can't believe we wouldn't ultimately get to that point. The only way I think we honestly don't get to that point is if humanity ends like prematurely.
I
Mhm.
just don't really. Yeah, I can't wrap my brain around it. It would just be us programming something, right? I just don't. I don't get. I can't. Like, I get that. I could probably read more about this, about how it would be on that, but I'm just like, it would be us making a million different like levers to press, right? Inside a robot's code.
Well, it would have to get to like the robots making robots kind of thing,
Right.
I think.
I don't get it.
I think what I
don't get it.
I think
I
what
don't- I can't wrap my brain. I'm not kidding.
I can't either, which is why I just go, it must happen, because I can't think about it. Like, it stresses me out too much to even, like, dig into it.
So you're just assuming it's a given at some point?
Yeah. Just
Right.
like, I have to accept that space is infinite, even though if I think about that, I lose my mind.
Right.
Like, I would, as a child, when I was, like, a lonely little, like, David robot in my bed, I'd like sit up and I'd look at the ceiling and I'd just be like, okay, so just imagine there's a rocket ship and it just keeps going fucking
Right.
forever.
Yeah.
And I'd go insane.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Insane. And I'd like scream and like claw at the walls.
Right.
What a weird kid.
Yeah, I was David.
God, I'd fucking leave you in the woods.
Yeah, my parents tried. And I went to Dr. No, and they told me where my
Right.
parents
Okay. So
whatever, fuck.
his
Yeah.
safety response bonds him to Gigolo Joe. Like like that's all that's happening there.
Just grab onto somebody and don't let go.
Like, keep me safe. So
Right.
they.
It's amazing that Gigolo Joe doesn't enter until 55 minutes into
He's
this movie.
great. I mean, and we should.
Yeah.
I guess at this point we've already seen we've had his little
introduction is the murder thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, his introduction is
The-
the start of Act 2.
Right, yeah.
So you see David receding in Monica's rearview mirror, and
Yeah.
Her
then
crappy car.
over black you hear a woman say, "I'm afraid."
Right.
And
She's
Gigolo says, "You're afraid that I'm going to hurt you?"
She's literally afraid of his robot penis.
Yeah. I mean, this
She doesn't
movie
want to
is
know what
really.
he's got in there.
I mean, I know we keep saying it, but like, imagine if Steven Spielberg didn't make this movie.
Yeah.
And somebody else made this movie,
They'd
and
all
they were like, "What's the backstory of this movie?" And he'd be like, "Well, I fucking hate Steven Spielberg, and I wanted to make a movie that people thought was a Spielberg movie, and then when you spend more than 2 seconds thinking about it, you realize this is a
It's about how all Spielberg movies are bullshit.
annihilating argument against this asshole's entire career." And Spielberg did that to himself.
Yeah, right.
That's why I feel like that's what makes. I mean, I've always thought that Spielberg obviously is like very must understand something about humans if he can make these movies that we respond so powerfully to.
Yes.
But I always felt like, I don't know, he seems kind of like Ron Howard. Like, is he really interesting? Has he really read Kierkegaard?
Is he just a robot that has
Yeah,
a
right,
programming
exactly.
to understand how to evoke that response?
I am
out of
programmed
us?
to make humans love me
Yeah,
by
and
my
he's got
movies.
the
I will make
levers.
movies to make you
Right.
love
He
me.
knows
Wide-eyed
which
child
lever's
will
depressed.
induce love.
Yeah, but this movie kind of makes me feel like, not that he's self-hating, but that I don't know. Anyway, you don't have to put that
Well,
in. You were still doing the plot summary.
No, we're keeping that in.
I just feel like Steven's. This
You
is the
want
movie.
me
Where,
to cut that out?
No, Ben.
Okay.
I feel like this is the movie where I'm like, Steven Spielberg might be one of the most interesting people in America.
I'm
Like,
with you, baby.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
here's an interesting thing is, after this movie, and now he's got his own studio, he can do whatever he wants.
Right.
He does so few classic Spielberg-y movies. He's doing a lot of different genre exercises. When he goes to do something like Indiana Jones 4, it's a disaster, and he clearly can't get back to the thing.
Yeah, he has trouble slipping into his classic vibe.
He does
Really?
he
Yeah.
more makes adult dramas now.
His best movies post
Right.
this are Minority Report, Munich, and Lincoln's more of a classic Spielberg movie, and but he's
But
back
it's
in
also
it now.
it's austere. Like he's
no,
making
he's
these
right.
austere,
He's now
adult-minded.
finally evolved into he can make more of his like classic Spielberg or whatever.
Right.
But it is this sort of kind of darker or austere. What is a better word for this? Like, I don't know, slightly more world weary tone. I
Yeah.
guess is the best way. to
Mhm.
put
And
it.
it's someone struggling to find the best in humanity,
Yeah,
rather than
right,
trying
right.
to like project to everyone like we're all gonna make it.
Oh, right.
Because
Yeah,
Bridge of Spies is very
Yeah.
much a movie about like
One
the
decent
guy's
man
like,
can
well,
do
we
a
don't
lot.
have to follow the rules, right?
Right.
And it's like, well, then why else do we have the rules? And it's like, I don't know. And he's like, no, I think we should have them. And like
But-
those
yes.
weird little
But the key to that,
tensions
and
at
I
the
think
heart
this
of-
is sort of what you're getting at, Rees, is that like he got blamed so much, has been blamed so much over the decades for like killing adult cinema.
Right.
Because Jaws created the blockbuster,
Right.
and then it was like he and Lucas kind of perpetuated this thing where it all became genre exercises. Genre got elevated to high art. Those were the movies that changed the entire theatrical model,
Right.
of how things
Right.
played, of opening
Certainly.
weekend being the thing of
Helped invent the
merchandising,
blockbuster,
all that sort of stuff. And it feels like it happens. I mean, this I think is the big fulcrum point in his career, and certainly now we're at the other end of it, where it's like when he tries to make a Spielberg movie in a traditional like Amblin-y sense, it doesn't really work. It's the BFG,
Mhm.
BFG is a good example.
But when he tries to make the movies that are either applying the Spielberg things to adult-minded things, which feels like he's trying to like do the mea culpa,
Uh-huh.
and like I'm the one guy with the sway to still get the kind of movies made that used to be made before I started making movies.
Uh-huh.
And he's very
Before I
publicly-
eradicated
Right.
very publicly disdainful of Hollywood and what he thinks Hollywood's doing right now.
He thinks
He's
the model's
very
fucked up
hates it,
now, and
yeah.
he's like, it's all $200 million movies. You can't get anything made anymore.
Right,
And it's like,
right.
but you're the one who kind of created that.
Right.
Yeah,
not
but it's
consciously.
not his fault.
No,
I mean,
he's-
he made a David bot. and
He's
then
David
God
Hobby.
knows what
He's
he
Dr.
did.
Hobby. He's Professor
Right,
Hobby.
right,
That's what
right,
he did,
yeah, yeah.
He like made a thing because he wanted to make it and his intentions were good, and the thing he made was good, but it had these
It destroyed
Yeah.
humanity.
Right, and he's trying to like fucking bring it back.
Right.
He's using the lock of hair and is like, how do I make a Capra movie? Put Tom Hanks in it,
Right.
So I think this movie is him starting to like really contemplate his legacy, but then it was sold and packaged as like Spielberg does
Right.
sci-fi again.
Yeah, right.
And everyone was
Right.
furious.
God, is there any chance you could get him on the show to talk about this movie? I would love
If I
to talk to him about this movie.
one day, hopefully, maybe in my life, I'll get to talk to Steven Spielberg for some reason, right? He'll make a movie,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
and he'll want to talk to a journalist.
I think
And
he's
I would
directing
love-
a couple episodes of The Tick this season. But
You know,
he's
maybe
doing-
you can get me an intro. But this would be the movie I would love to know the most about. I'd love to pick his brain about the
Yeah.
movie.
If you have one director and you can talk to that director about one movie they've made, would this be the movie?
I'd love to talk to him about.
I mean, it would just be such an interesting conversation because you would learn so much,
I'd
even
wanna
in
know
his
everything.
contemporary reaction to your
Yeah.
questions. He might be like, "Yeah, I don't know. I was trying some stuff. It's pretty good. Like Jude
Yeah,
Law
that's-
gives a good, or he might be like, "Thank you, David.
Yeah,
You see
understand.
what I was doing."
He takes like a cube out of his head.
Yeah, right.
He's like-
I'll say this: I met Ang Lee once and did that spiel to him about Hulk, and he did that exact thing.
Right.
Really?
Someone introduced me and was like, "Hey, this is Griffin. He wants to talk to you about Hulk." And he goes like, "Oh, I'm sorry. And I was like, "No. I think I get it." And I said my like 15 seconds, and he literally went like, "Thank you." And it was like
Yeah.
hushed tones. It was like, I feel
Right.
like I have to apologize for that movie all the time, but yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
Really?
And he wasn't like, "It's a masterpiece," right?
Right,
But he
right.
was like, "Yeah, that's what I was trying."
Nobody
to
gets that. That's what I
Yeah.
was going for.
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be
And I
so
kind of
amazing.
want to
Only-
believe that Spielberg would do the same
Yeah,
thing.
right.
He'd be like,
He's
Right.
talked about
yeah.
the
He would
movie.
say that. He would say, "Here's my fantasy." He would say, first of all, David Rees, it's so great to finally meet you. And secondly,
I was a huge fan of Election Prophecy.
right,
because
exactly.
I got the
That
Wave Rider
podcast-
shirt.
"Where are
And
the
then he-
other
and then-
four
and-
episodes
and-
of Going Deep on
and
Amazon?"
then he would say, "Thank you. That is the only movie I've ever made that matters. Like, it's the only good one, and it says everything. I left it all on the
I think
road
it's
out there."
kind of his whole. I think it is sort of the key to unlocking his entire identity.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of do. I
don't
think
know.
I think
It's definitely a key to unlocking his identity at this point. In his career.
But I think that's the point. This is the fulcrum point of everything he ever represented.
I'm trying to find. I mean, I've certainly seen him talk about the movie post the film's react.
Uh-huh.
Where he talked about the fact that it's like his amusement at the idea that people thought he tacked on the ending, where he's like, "That was Stanley Kubrick, man.
Right.
Like, I was working with what he gave me." And, like,
by the way, it's
believe me,
not a happy ending.
Yeah, that is
Right.
part of a whole.
Right,
But
right.
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to see more of him talking about this movie. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure maybe he has. Maybe he'll write a book. Should he do one of those?
I mean,
things?
honestly,
Spielberg on Spielberg.
what is a bleaker big Hollywood movie?
It's a good question. I mean, there must be a couple other things, but this is right up there. I don't know.
I mean, and I'm not saying because
No, you're
obviously,
right. This is a bleak movie, and it has a bleak ending. Like, it's not.
have you ever seen that movie Seconds? The Rock Hudson movie Seconds?
The
Yeah.
Frankenheimer movie.
Yeah. Which is also really kind of bleak,
Very bleak.
and shattering
Yeah, there's
because the message is you can't start over, like you're doomed, right?
Right.
Well, yeah, like in the 60s and 70s, Hollywood
The conversation's
made
really
movies,
bleak,
conversations.
the way it
fucking
ends,
Taxi Driver's bleak, right?
Right.
Like there's tons of movies
right,
that are
and,
like that,
and
you know?
but I think when I talk about the dread in this movie, it is interesting because it does feel like what you're saying, like Spielberg kind of killed grown-up movies,
Yeah.
or him and
Right.
Lucas, and the vibe that I get from this movie is kind of that 70s vibe of like, oh my god,
Yeah.
like
But then
Like-
it's like a 2000s like sci-fi
That cost
like
$100
big budget
million.
epic.
Right,
It's just like
right.
he's like bringing you in. He's like, you want the thing you like, and then he
Right.
slaps you in the face and
Right,
is like,
right.
you're dumb for wanting
Yeah,
this,
right.
and then makes you keep.
oh
coming
yeah, you want to
back.
see skyscrapers that just look like a huge pair of neon tits,
Yeah.
all right, but then
Yeah.
we're
I
Oh.
mean, but that's the thing. But people didn't react that way. They kind of reacted just like, the fuck was that? Like,
Yeah.
they didn't react with
Right.
like, or I mean, I feel like the overall reaction wasn't like, I'm bummed out. It was more
they were
like,
just
no,
like, this
they were
is
just
dumb.
like, it doesn't make any sense.
Cheated,
It's
or-
cheesy.
yeah.
It's really trite.
very cheesy.
A boy who can love, and it's all Pinocchio.
It's all
and like,
Pinocchio.
and
Why
it's
does
so
he have to have
stupid?
fucking- yeah.
And you feel. I think a huge part of it is you feel
feel embarrassed
embarrassed.
for being pumped up for it.
Well, no,
maybe.
I mean, also you feel embarrassed for him. You feel embarrassed for David. Like,
Yeah.
dude, 2,000 years you're sitting underwater looking at this dumb statue just to make you real.
Oh God,
You know what
that
I mean? Like-
shot of the blue fairy statue just crumbling is rough.
Yeah, when he touches it.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, but I
think-
gotta get us back on
yeah,
track.
yeah.
What do you want to say?
No, I think that's the reaction that audiences had very much was like a typical teenager response, where it's just like, this makes me feel weird.
Right.
It's dumb. Fuck you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
You know, like
yeah,
once
totally,
it started out
totally.
on a weird foot, people just like pushed it away and defensively were like
Sure.
laughing at it, so they didn't have to engage with it.
Now, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
So, do you know the movie critic Armand White?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Who worked at the New York Press.
So when this
the
movie
glory
came,
years
right,
of Armand White,
right,
who's
right.
still around,
Right,
he's
he
still
writes
at
for-
every screening I go to.
Right, he's a critic for National Review.
He
It's
is?
so perfect.
Noted
Anyway.
provocateur, contrarian
Yeah,
film
right.
critic.
Yeah,
Once
exactly.
called Steve McQueen a garbage man at the New York Film Critics Circle when they were giving Steve McQueen a award.
Right, but
And-
that
and-
same year listed Jack and Jill as one of his top 10 movies of the year.
Right. He is involved in a decades-long performance of being a cantankerous public intellectual, and I think even he no longer knows when he's trolling and when
I
he's
think
holding
he-
on to legitimate anti-establishment, anti-Hollywood elitist gripes.
He's
But
lost the game a little bit in the bit.
I
The
would-
bit's
Right,
gotten a
yeah.
little
I
sloppy.
would
But-
say, especially back in the day and these days, it used to be like if when Armand Wright wrote about something he liked, it was fucking beautiful. Like
Yeah.
he could
Well-
wrght the most incredible stuff about stuff he liked.
Yeah, but
So
now he
that's
applies that to
but
Resident
see-
Evil Retribution.
See, that's
the problem.
interesting to me because so Armand White, I'll explain to your listeners who are not East Coast elitists, used to write for this
No,
free.
we have an only
Is it all?
East Coast
okay,
elite.
fine.
No,
So
no.
everyone,
This is a
you guys all
bubble-only
remember the New
podcast.
York Press, this amazing free alt weekly, and he was the critic, and he would always just take the opposite view of whatever the critical consensus was most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
He fucking loved AI, artificial intelligence. His review of AI, I read it the other week, is so incredible.
It is.
And
I have it right here.
and I could not find it because the New York Press no longer exists. The following week, he started to review another movie, and then basically was like, fuck it, I need to talk about AI some more. You idiots don't understand how incredible this movie is. And his argument in that initial review was people can't handle this movie because they won't let themselves remember what it's like to be a child and to need to be loved. And that review actually kind of made me think like is that why I kind of thought this movie was weird? Am I too afraid to remind myself what it's like to be vulnerable and needy? But rereading that review again, I don't think he actually got it. I don't
This
think
is
he
a good take, right when, for when you just saw
when
the
you
movie.
first
yeah,
but I think in the end it's wrong. I think it's not that people made fun of the movie because they couldn't handle the pure bottomless innocence, need, and longing that defines our childhood, and the weird Freudian erotic relationship, that initial bond between mother and child, especially if it's mother and son and all that stuff. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's more like what you were just saying. I think people reacted weird to this movie because they can't handle how fucking bleak the message is, which is that love is doom.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
It's a curse. It's
Right,
like a thing
yeah.
we have to overcome.
Like a disease.
Yeah,
Like
right.
we
exactly.
have to use all our other
Right.
faculties and facilities as a human being to still function, even though we have this love thing driving
the
us.
sum total of human experience and human culture and human storytelling and myth making and institutions and family and religion is to overcome the fact that we are empty.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we will never be filled.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's what makes the movie so kind of profound in a way, and also why everyone made fun of it and snickered in the movie theater when I was watching it way back then.
But I do think when you're a kid, you feel that, and you don't know how to put it into words, and you don't understand what's going on. But that's
Right.
that loneliness, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then as you get older and you learn how to deal with it, and you push things away, and you bring things closer, and what have you. When like people want to see like Amblin type movies, they want to be reminded of parts of their childhood that they still look back on fondly. And this movie is about a feeling that people don't put into words that everyone tries to forget when they grow up.
Yeah, I feel like this movie is kind of like it's like there's so much adult culture now that just trades in nostalgia. And
Right.
Spielberg, obviously, a huge part of that, right? And I feel like what he did in this movie was like, you're like, well, you know what's behind your need for nostalgia and mommy's love.
Right.
Which is that you are an empty shell, and you always will be, and someday all of humanity will be erased.
Right. You love Gremlins because Gremlins made you feel less close to death for 2 hours when you were 10.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, right. Anyway.
AI analyzes how one loves by fathoming the need for love. Are those happy tears? David asks his distraught mother. In such moments, AI's unprecedented combination of curiosity and intimacy is
breathtaking. I remember that review, yeah.
The end of his review. Anyway, good movie. At the same time, this is a movie that I would totally get a kick out of watching some comedian do like 10 minutes just ripping it to shreds. Like it's a movie where I understand people disliking it, I guess, or what, you know what I
Sure.
mean? Like
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what's so audacious about it. It is preposterous.
it's preposterous. That's a great way to put it.
It's truly preposterous.
Shall we
And it's so
discuss-
unconcerned with
and
internal
most-
logic.
Yeah,
I mean, the
it's
only
so
thing we haven't-
ambitious
Yeah.
and so
It is.
It's
very,
like it's preposterous in the way that cathedrals are preposterous. They're reaching for something so ineffable
Right, this
and
is
so
his, like, Baroque
sublime.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really does feel like he's trying to make a sublime movie, right? Where you can't really put it doesn't, like, the flowchart is never going to make sense. There is not a coherent theory of artificial intelligence vis-a-vis Gigolo Joe versus David. You know, it's contradicting itself. It just turns into this deep, like I said earlier, just deep, churning, incredibly bleak emotional sludge, you know, in a way that is cliche to say, it feels very human. I mean, it's very muddied in the way that all human struggles with the profound are muddy. But
the Bible works on an emotional level more than intellectual
Right,
level
yeah,
because it
right.
contradicts itself all the time.
right,
It's aiming
yeah.
at some
Right.
sense of feeling.
right, yeah.
Right.
Something that relates to this is the Dr. No scene, which I love, which is like the idea of
Nothing
trying
he
to
doesn't.
There's nothing he doesn't. The idea of trying to break all human knowledge down to this algorithmic machine, right, is so weird. Because one, he's trying to trick you. That's the best thing about Dr. No. Is maybe he's like, you better ask him exactly. He's like a weird oracle, right? Like he's like
a Carney game. They're just trying to get money out of you.
But at the same
Well,
time,
new bucks.
Right.
yeah, they want some new bucks, yeah. Which is the best, by the way. But
It's maybe my favorite name for future currency.
the weird puzzle of trying to get a proper answer out of him, where they have to combine flat fact with fairy tale,
Right.
Yeah.
is like he's trying to tell us something. Like, because if the movie has a set piece, it's the fucking Dr. No scene,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Where
Like,
Robin Williams.
The most tension is there. They only have 9 questions. Robin Williams plays a cartoon Mr. Einstein.
And he's going like full goofballs McGillicuddy, and that's the most tension in the whole movie. Is
And
Robin
then-
Williams going
and
like, ask a question, there's nothing I don't know.
Right.
But then he's like, oh, Pinocchio. You know, like the way his
He becomes so reverent. But then what's really crazy is then you hear Hobby hacked into him to give.
right,
I mean,
yeah.
it makes it's crazy. It's preposterous. That's my
what
final
do you guys think
adjective.
of Rouge? Rouge City's actually not much of the movie.
No.
In my
No.
head, it was a little more, but really, and I watched this with Joanna, and
It's the most expensive part of the movie, but certainly not.
that scene where they go through the lady mouth tunnels.
Adrian Grenier is loving it.
Adrian Grenier wants that the porn bot on his dick, you know,
Yeah. He had a little dancing on his dick.
that, you know, I think you think like, all right, here we go. But I do love the idea that Gigolo just like, check this place out. I was made here. I learned all my tricks of the trade here. And he's like, okay, yeah, where's the nearest Dr. No? Like, how do I, like,
Right. No, he's
and then of course, I mean, I really do think the religious metaphors are obvious in this movie, but I do like that Gigolo Joe gets that moment where he hangs outside of the church,
right.
and he's like, "This is when people want to see me the most."
Right.
when
Yeah.
they're
yeah,
coming out of
right.
here.
Yeah.
We've talked about the whole movie now, because then, of course, the end.
We talked about it out of order, but yeah.
We mostly dove into the end, but
That was our beginning.
the end is his self-awareness, right? He comes to meet Hobby. He realizes he is a fucking speck, you know.
This is the most. Yeah. This
That-
scene
where
is
he meets
so,
his double. And
This is when people really start laughing. I think this is when people really. I mean, my experience watching it in the theater.
it's so uncomfortable. How
It's
do you not
so
laugh?
uncomfortable when he said, and maybe this is a moment that Armin White gets at in his review when he's saying, "I am special, I am unique, I am David." I mean, he's really putting it all out there in a way that the rest of us spend our entire lives doing that as subtext, right? You know what I mean? But for him to do it and then to literally
Violently
destroy
smash.
his doppelganger
Yes.
because he realizes he is not special,
Right.
Like there's boxes and boxes.
And one of the boxes is moving. Like, it's
Yeah,
like very
it's- that
overt
scene
horror
is just
movie.
so over the top and just I love it.
I love it too. And then that final line of his, where my brain is falling out,
Yeah.
which is like such a great childish encapsulation of, right, like the awareness of mortality, right, or one's like
Or your mind being blown.
foolishness.
Yeah,
and
totally.
My brain is falling out.
Totally.
Can I throw out one
And
more
they-
angle
Yeah.
that I think is important to talk about with this movie? Because we talked a lot about it being sort of a horror movie about the terror of being a child, you know, and not being able to understand what you feel and all of that. This is also a horror movie about being a parent. Like,
Yeah.
I think this is totally, from Spielberg's perspective, as a dude who has a bunch of kids, right?
Oh, does he?
Yeah, a
Tons of
bunch.
kids.
Oh.
Adopted,
Right.
birth,
Okay.
you know, himself came out of his own penis, a lot of children. And I think this is, to some degree, a movie. I don't think this is the main thesis, but I think it's a thing he's wrestling with, is the terror of bringing something into the world, imprinting it, and knowing that forever that thing's going to be tied to you.
Yeah, I'm not a parent, so I haven't thought about that angle.
Yeah, this is, I mean, 3
There's 7
non-parents
children. Right.
talking about this.
That makes sense.
But
yeah.
I've heard a lot of people who are parents who can't watch this fucking movie. It
I
just
have friends
destroys them.
who are parents and can't watch this movie.
Because it's like a terror of this is my fear of what will happen if I bring a child into the world.
Right.
This is my fear of what could happen to my child I already have.
Right.
And just that they will forever ever be defined by your relationship to them. And that will never go away.
Yeah.
Whether you're present, whether you
Sure.
abandon them.
Yeah,
No, that's true.
Yeah.
You're right. It's a good nightmare of parenthood. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then his, I mean, I interpret him his self-defense mechanism finally kicks in. He decides to die, right? I mean, I don't know what else that's supposed to be when he basically just pitches himself off.
He says
the edge of the
"mommy," and
building.
then he throws himself off the skyscraper.
he
Yeah, I
doesn't
mean,
have
it's
anything.
Right.
and people used to, I feel like as they came
So
around,
crazy.
I know you
It's
just
so-
said it out loud.
It's so crazy.
And
it's so intense.
oh god, and then Gigolo Joe gets sucked away, and he has that perfect final line: "I am,
I am,
I
I
was."
was.
Right.
Ooh,
Which
baby.
is right. Like if that's a robot summing up the
Right.
experience of death, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
We don't have time to get into this, but God, what a weird career Jude Law's had.
He's had a weird
Especially when
career.
at this movie it felt like it was this is going to be the anointment, you know?
Right. This is the beginning of superstardom.
Yeah.
But Spielberg gets Jude Law is an uncommonly pretty, odd-looking guy.
He's a
Right.
little
He's
too
perfect
slick.
for this kind of a role, which
Yeah.
is like a sort of a perversion of a movie star.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, like some sort of ersatz movie star that
Right.
has the look, but there's just something off about him.
Yeah.
And then he goes
Yeah.
and he starts playing.
He moves
jazz
so
music.
well in this movie.
Moves
Looks like
amazing.
a fuck
Yeah.
boy.
It's incredible.
He looks like a fuckboy.
He moves like a fuckboy, Benbot?
Yes,
Define fuckboy.
All right.
a fuckable boy.
Okay.
But in the same, or is it next year? He's in Road to Perdition.
Yeah.
That's the good Jude Law shit. He needs to be some little weirdo.
He's a great character actor. That's that thing that happens a lot with an incredibly handsome, charismatic dude everyone thinks is a leading man, and then they realize they're a character actor. And his breakout was Talented Mr. Ripley, in which he played a really handsome, charismatic dude, but as a character part.
Yeah.
So everyone was like, "Oh, just make him the lead of stuff." And it's too slick. It never really works.
It only works in Cold Mountain, and then, that's
Yeah,
the movie.
yeah.
You
This is
got some notes for us,
A
David?
really literal question.
Sure.
So, in the final shot of the movie, Monica has fallen asleep, and David is in bed with her, and the voiceover says that he goes to the place where dreams are born,
Yes, right.
and Teddy crawls up on the bed
Thank you.
and watches over them.
I was hoping we'd get to this.
The next day, what does Teddy do?
Fucking sits and
Is
contemplates
it like
his
does he
existence.
do 2,000 years of focused meditation?
Well, here's the other question about Teddy. Monica turns him on when she brings him back.
Right.
So there is the implication that you can kind of hibernate that guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but who's going to do that now?
I don't know. Maybe they like him too. Maybe there's a Teddy museum.
If Spielberg didn't want you to be asking that, I don't think Teddy would be in the final shot.
Yeah, I think it's a mirror of obviously the most obvious analogy came, just a few minutes ago in the movie when they sat looking at the Blue Fairy for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
And Teddy said, "We're in a cage." And then now we're in a second cage because now Teddy, because you're pulling out the final shot, they pull out through the window of their house
Yes.
reconstruction or
Yep.
whatever it is.
Mhm.
And again, you're in basically a glass box, kind of witnessing helplessly or wishing on this idealized. Fuck, this is what it is. Yeah. Okay. So think about it. He's in the amphibicopter for looking
2,000
at
years,
for
yeah.
looking
at
at
the
this
Blue Fairy.
idealized
Yes.
vision of motherhood,
Absolutely.
Madonna,
Yes.
everything.
And God,
right?
right? Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And God, just the whole kit and caboodle.
Creator. Yeah.
Wishing. Please, make me a real boy. Make me a real boy. Right.
Yeah.
For 2,000 years, and Teddy's
long
sitting there
time.
like, I can't believe we're sitting here for 2,000 years in this cage. This kid is never going to get what he wants. Right. Then
I
they
had
get
plans.
Then they get saved. Then they get
Call
saved.
my girlfriend till I'm
and
canceling
then
dinner
and then
tonight.
the movie ends with Teddy, presumably, there's no reason not to believe this wouldn't happen, spending the rest another 2,000 years now looking not at the idealized image of mommy/God, but this, I guess, a pieta, right?
Yeah,
of
tableau,
of the mother and the son reunited
in death.
Yeah, in a literal death embrace, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
if Spielberg didn't want you thinking about that, knowing he's just a filmmaker of such intentionality, even when he's
Right.
bad, there's nothing that's in there by accident,
Right.
right?
It's even
Yeah.
in the Wikipedia recap, the last line: Teddy climbs into the bed and watches as David and Monica lie
But he doesn't
peacefully
climb
together.
into the bed; he climbs onto the bed. Like I even think
Yeah, he
that's
sort
a
of-
big
yeah,
distinction.
yeah.
up.
He sits
Yeah.
at the foot of the
Yeah,
bed,
And he doesn't lie down. He
Right,
sits
right.
facing
He sits.
towards
He
them.
watches them.
And that's
Yeah.
the last thing
Yeah,
the movie
yeah.
leaves you with is
Yeah,
him just
yeah.
looking
and
at
then
them
all
sitting.
the lights in the house are going out until it's just that one.
The silhouette of Teddy looking at two dead people.
Oh my
on the
God,
bed.
Teddy won.
He did. Teddy gets out of this one
Yeah,
alive.
yeah.
Teddy won.
But no, I mean, when I was watching this with Joanna, and when the when the fucking thing falls on him, and she was like, "Jesus, it's gonna end like this," and I was like, "No, it's worse." Like you think it'll end.
That's when everyone thinks it ends.
Right,
I
and
mean,
that's
the
what-
big criticism,
became
right?
the
So it should have just
idea,
ended
right?
with him staring at this dumb statue underwater forever, right?
But that feels incomplete to me.
And that's a less challenging ending. Like,
Yeah,
it's a
I
less
agree.
challenging ending.
I agree.
That's
You
more
just
Right.
walk out and you go, well, that's dark. You don't
Right.
have to think about it.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, then
right.
it's just a
poor guy
tragedy.
never got what he wanted. That's
Yeah,
a
it's
shame.
a
Right, no.
tragedy.
But
of
the
like,
real
they
ending is
shouldn't have
like,
made
oh,
the
he got
robot.
what he wanted. Like he's a mother's
you
love
get to
is
see it.
pretty messed up.
Right,
Yeah.
Right, here they have that coffee rotary thing, the like little carousel of coffees. How many
Yeah.
coffees these guys have? That's what I couldn't stop thinking about during the coffee. They have like 9 brands of coffee.
Yeah, that's definitely
You
my
mean
major
Monica and her
takeaway.
yeah,
husband?
Monica
Yeah.
and her husband. Jesus,
Careless consumerism. I mean,
Wow.
that's what led to the seawaters rising, right?
Manhattan.
That's why they
what
call it
And
Manhattan.
like, don't try and
So
tell.
weird.
Don't try and think why a massive cybertronics company would have its headquarters in a flooded city.
They're like, hey, just don't use floors 1 through 25.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
I don't care. I don't know.
Helicopter, amphibicopter to the top of the building, and then elevator down.
Yeah.
Do you think there are people like in the mailroom who are just like
They just don't know.
seeing fish floating by?
Yeah, right. Underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad. Well, yeah, I actually did not think we were all going to like this movie. I'm glad that we all at least thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great movie. I think it's a great American movie.
I think it is. I think it's one of the most. I mean, it's
Very
kind of a cop out.
interesting,
It's
yeah.
a very, very interesting
That's
movie,
fine.
Yeah.
and I think it's doubly interesting because of who made it,
Mhm.
and because of the budget, and because that it was actually in movie theaters outside of his own mind. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it feels like.
And it's a hell of a year for movies too. It comes in a crazy great year for movies.
In 2001,
Yeah. Mulholland Drive,
that's a good movie.
Gosford Park, which is one of my favorite
Great
movies.
movie.
Rush Hour 2.
Royal Tenenbaums, Memento, a lot of like influential movies. whether or
Right,
not.
yeah, yeah.
Waking Life is that
Uh-huh.
year. A lot of movies.
In the Bedroom.
Donnie
was with her that
Darko,
year.
which is
Training
not a
Day,
movie I
yeah.
love, but is a movie that's had
Yeah, those are
a
ambitious.
footprint.
Those are
Moulin
ambitious
Rouge,
movies.
Shrek.
Fast and the Furious.
Yeah. Dr. Dolittle 2.
Do you think they should have just, when they watched the final cut of this movie, been like, you know what, Stephen, we all love it. This is a profound piece of filmmaking. How would you feel if we said it was a David Lynch movie?
Yeah, right.
Because if it was a David Lynch movie, I feel like everyone would go in with
Yeah.
the right sense. Because Mulholland Drive actually is another movie that does give me kind of the same feeling of dread.
Yeah,
You know?
although I like it makes me I have more fun watching that movie.
Than AI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just I know what you mean. It certainly has very profound sense of dread, but it's literally more fun. Like it's having
Yeah.
more fun. Yeah.
But do you think if they had marketed it as a David Lynch movie, people would have kind of gone in ready to
There's-
have
I
the
think-
moment of like, oh shit, this
Exact-
is so heavy, bro.
There is no
And-
question that Spielberg's name totally messed with people's perception of the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
There can't be. And also the fact that they released it in June, which is an
Like-
odd time to
right.
release. a
And they
movie like
also were
this.
very mysterious with the marketing. I mean, there was that whole thing. This was
Yeah,
like
the
the first
poster
movie
was
to
just
do.
the AI,
Right.
you know, like
Yeah.
But this was also the first movie to do, what's the term I'm looking for? In the marketing, they did the thing. Do you remember this? On the poster and in the trailer, there was a credit block for like some sort of specific scientific assistant. And someone leaked to like
Oh,
Ain't It
really?
Cool News, like, oh, if you Google that name and that weird credit, and they did like,
Oh
what-
yeah, they did like viral marketing.
right,
I mean,
not
yeah.
augmented reality, but what's the term
No,
for it? Like,
ARGs.
ARG,
Yeah.
right,
Oh,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
There was like a whole ARG, and he was the first person to like use this in mainstream marketing. where they created a whole like sphere of websites for the companies connected to the movie, and there was like a mystery to unlock.
Oh,
People got really into it, and that was like a lot of the marketing. And then the trailers were very short,
right,
very sparse,
right,
very sort of enigmatic.
right.
You know, there was like
it was
very
an elaborate
little known.
murder mystery that played out across
Right.
hundreds of websites.
What?
You had to
Yeah,
solve this murder
you're
of
right.
like a scientist. Yeah.
It was a runaway success. But yeah, it didn't actually fucking make any fucking sense compared to like this movie.
Can I do a quick merchandise spotlight?
Very quick.
Very quick.
Yes.
They thought, oh, Spielberg movie, it's got a toy in it. That's an obvious one. So they like made a teddy, I think using like Furby technology. They like made a teddy and it was going to come out that Christmas. And they were like, we got to rush it. We were behind the wheel on this one, so we got to rush it to get out in time for Christmas. And then June, when the movie opens, they're like, oh shit. And so they like pulled the plug immediately. So the teddies go for like $1,000 now.
Wow. Does the teddy say anything other than "Where is David"? It just says
This
that.
is a
Where's
cage.
David?
Yeah.
Is this it?
Oh my
Yeah, but
gosh.
Super Teddy, they try to make it look like the packaging of what it would be in the movie.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But I think they like it's a very, very hard to find item.
The fucking Teddy bot is amazing. You want to see?
It's incredible. Yeah.
What do you mean?
See the real, how they made him.
Oh, it
happen.
was a real.
It's a real robot.
Oh, they
Yeah.
did.
But even when they do the CGI,
Oh.
for some of the scenes where he's more
Right,
physically
sure,
active,
right,
it's
yeah.
very well done.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, he looks great.
And I don't mean this backhandedly, but like
Right.
the fucking Seth MacFarlane Ted comes out like 12 years later, and the CGI is as good in AI.
Right.
You know, like no advancements have been made. They just
No.
nailed it on the first try.
Yeah.
Box
Box office game?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was June 29th, 2001.
Opened to 21 million. Is that correct?
29 million.
Wow, that's higher than I thought.
Yeah, it opened pretty well, and then it only makes 78. So it really
Worldwide or domestic?
no domestic.
Okay.
Worldwide, it made $235 million. So it actually did fine.
And what was the budget?
$100 million.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
A lot of shit going on in
Yeah.
this movie.
Is this Spielberg's least successful movie?
No, not by a long
Oh,
shot.
okay.
But I will say, I think at this point,
If you're taking out at this point, it's one of his biggest bombs in years.
he only had a couple at this point that didn't make 100 million. Like it's like Always didn't make 100 million.
Always an Amistad
and the other
and
one,
Empire
of the
Sun.
Sun.
Oh, right.
And then
Um,
Save for Sugarland Express. Like those are the only
in
movies.
1941.
Oh, right. But almost
certainly,
always he
yeah.
made over 100. So this was like a big disappointment.
Definitely, it's at the
Yeah.
bottom end of his. Usually, yeah. Even like Hook made a ton of money.
Right.
Whatever. Like even his kind of crappy movies do well.
Like Color Purple was huge. Even when he
Yeah.
would do like drama, like
Color
Schindler's
Purple made
List
$100 million.
made like a ton of money. You know,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And Saving Private Ryan 3 years earlier was the #1 movie of that year, and that's a
Right.
very like
Very hard to imagine a
uncompromising,
movie like
hard
that
to watch
now.
movie.
Right.
Number 2 is a movie you love. It's its second week.
The
It's
Fast and the Furious.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Fast and the
Yeah,
Furious.
I remember that. Yeah, right.
More of a summer fare, I would
Uh-huh.
say. More your typical summer
Although,
fare.
if you really think about what's going on in those movies, David, it is so dark.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those
About
movies
the
are also
emptiness
about our
of-
unending
yeah,
need
yeah.
for love.
Yeah.
I guess, well, what movie
Yeah.
isn't?
Yeah. I mean, Vin Diesel is kind of our mother, culturally.
Uh-huh.
He is the mother we're always seeking the approval from.
Well, it is interesting that the point of the movie is that they're driving a quarter mile. Like, they're driving nowhere. They're
Right.
just driving, like,
It's a human condition, man.
right. We're all driving that right.
And they all gather to watch this spectacle. Okay, number 2.
Also, cars zoom zoom go fast.
Number 3 is a sequel to a children's movie that you've already
Dr.
mentioned.
Dolittle too. Yeah.
I actually loved the first one when I was little.
I did too. And I remember
I have not seen the second one.
it was the day before my brother and I were both going to go to a sleepaway camp. My parents dropped us off at the theater, and they were like, "You can go see a movie. Like, as long as you stay together, you can go see a movie together." And I really want to see Dr. Dolittle too. And he put his foot down for Fast and Furious, which I was furious about at the time. And he ended up saving my life.
yeah.
Bringing me into the
Giving you
franchise.
Vinny,
It really, that was,
I
I needed that.
Number 4 is a very successful or quite successful video game movie.
The first Resident Evil?
No.
2001.
It was like a decent hit for a movie based on a video game. It launched a star. She'd already won an Oscar.
Lord
Tomb
Raider.
Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
Not
never,
a good
never
movie,
saw
but-
it.
Pretty
Yeah.
forgettable.
You know what? I'm thinking I've only seen a handful of Steven Spielberg movies. When you're naming all
Is that
these
right?
movies, I feel like I've seen.
Well, you've probably seen
Jaws,
you've seen the
E.T.,
big
Close
ones.
Encounters.
I don't think I've seen Close Encounters all the way through.
Wow. Have you seen Jaws?
Yes.
You've seen the Indiana Jones movie?
I've seen and I've seen the first Indiana Jones movie.
Sure.
I've seen E.T.
Right.
Adventures of Tintin, though?
No, I had to do a hard pass on that.
We'll listen to our episode about it later this podcast.
I've seen AI and I've seen
You seen Schindler's List?
no,
Private
Uh-huh.
Ryan?
no,
Amistad?
no,
Color Purple?
no.
Hook.
No.
The
Yeah,
Terminal.
you're missing a
No.
lot of them. Minority Report.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah. My buddy's in that. Shout out to Daniel.
Really? Who is he?
Wally.
Oh my God!
The tech.
The tech. The
Yeah,
fucking.
yeah.
It's your guy. That's your buddy.
Yeah, yeah. He's an
he's
old college
good.
friend. Yeah. He's,
Yeah. Catch Me If You Can. You seen that one?
yeah, is that about a guy running a scam?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. Leo DiCaprio.
Okay.
He's
yeah.
a big scam artist.
Yeah,
Keeps on taking on
okay.
different
Yep,
identities.
Yep.
Yeah.
War of the Worlds. These are
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
We're
All
gonna
right.
get
now
to that.
I'm in more, I guess, into
These
late
are-
Spielberg.
Now
I guess,
Munich.
yes.
Have you seen Munich? You might
Yes,
get a kick out
I
of
have.
Munich.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got to go post 2000s, and then you're on
Yeah,
Did you see
Tintin, no.
Lincoln?
No.
War Horse,
War Horse.
No.
Bridge of
Bridge of
Spies.
Spies.
No.
BFG. Probably
No.
not.
Haven't seen.
So
BFG
you
yet.
got to catch up to the
right.
recent effort.
Okay,
Yeah.
what's number 5?
Number 5 is a very good movie by an African American director
Ooh.
that made a little bit of money. I would say it's probably the last good movie he ever made.
So is it a John Singleton movie?
Yes.
It's the last good movie he made.
It is a very nice little movie, though. It introduced
Shaft
the world.
is the year before that. Is it Baby Boy?
It's Baby Boy,
Okay.
I never seen that.
which is a pretty small scale, kind of indie, almost like indie
Yeah.
feeling drama
It was a coming of
about
age.
growing up. Yeah, starring
Mm.
Tyrese.
It would be indie
Right,
today. At
yep.
that time, studios
remember that
still
movie,
made
yeah.
small movies like that. Yeah.
Good movie.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he goes on to make Too Fast, Too Furious next, I think.
Yeah.
That's his next movie.
Yeah.
He sort of falls off the deep end there. That opened to $8 million in this weekend.
Okay.
So, yeah, so AI doesn't really, make a big deal at the box office. It gets nominated for 2 Oscars,
Visual
score
effects
and
and
visual
score,
effects, both deserved. And I feel like it sort of eventually becomes a bit of a critic's darling, but I mean, it's taken a long time for people to come around on AI.
Yeah, I feel like it also has
It's
become
still so scarred with its.
I'm not saying this is exclusively its supporter base, but I feel like it is the Spielberg movie for people who don't like Spielberg.
I agree with that. Can I give a shout out to an essay somebody wrote that really?
Yeah, please do. You were telling me. I want to read this
So
essay.
the writer Timothy Kreider, I think it's Kreider. I can't remember if it's Kreider or Kreider. Kreider wrote an essay for this movie in Film Comment. I think shortly after it came out.
You got his name right. Tim Kreider.
And it's really insightful and really helped me understand why I find this movie disturbing. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Tim's essay.
I'm looking at his
I
cartoons right now. He's got some cool
liked
cartoons.
it. Yeah.
Nice shout out. And I'd like to give a shout out to Going Deep with David Rees, which you can find in a treasure chest at the bottom of the ocean.
Seriously, yeah.
We
it's
are in a
underneath-
cage. Spend 2,000 years praying to the blue fairy that will ever come out on a good DVD edition.
Folks, get inside your amphibicopter and hunt for that Blu-ray. It's a great show, and it's worth the effort.
Thank you.
And it is. I'll say it again. It is a show that has actually changed the way I live my day-to-day life.
I love that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's a gift of a program.
I totally agree. I love Going Deep.
And thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm excited for
Thank you so
anything
much
you
for
do
having
next,
me,
David. It was great to have you.
Well, I was so stoked to talk about this movie, and I was so excited when I heard that you found this movie as fascinating as I do, because it really is like one of the strangest movies I think I've ever seen
Mm-hmm.
in a way that feels very authentically strange
Mhm.
instead of the whole point of this is that it's strange.
Absolutely,
Do you know what I
right.
mean? It just feels
Yeah.
like
It's almost trying to be.
normal.
Well, hey, wait,
Right.
this is
It
a Hollywood
hates that
movie.
people don't
and,
like it.
Yeah.
Wait, no. We're trying to entertain you. Look at this, Rouge City.
Yeah,
Whoa,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Ah!
You don't
yeah.
build
So,
that
yeah.
big of a set if you don't think everyone's gonna get on board with
Right,
your movie.
yeah. I just think it's such a fascinating movie. So thanks for letting me come on to talk about it.
Definitely. Thank you for
Our
having
pleasure.
me.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks us for having you.
Thanks,
Oh,
big thanks
boy.
to us for having you on the show.
Next week, Minority Report.
Next week is Minority Report.
It's a great film.
And we have a cool guest who I'm not going to say because every time I announce a guest, then they
Then they
end up
can't make
canceling
it,
it. So
so-
I'm not going to jinx us, but I think we'll have a really
I think
great
we have a
guest
good
on the
guest.
next episode.
Ooh,
Please remember to rate, review, subscribe on iTunes.
Ben Bond, how are you
Come on, man.
doing?
Put some.
Podcast
It's not.
choice.
Don't be
Rate,
afraid to ask
David.
for what you like.
Review, subscribe on iTunes. I'd love it.
Write us a review, fellas.
Don't give 0 stars unless you're a Sith Lord. BenBot, commence final thoughts.
Yes. We didn't get to it, but the future music,
Oh right.
Yeah,
I
we were talking about
I
it.
don't think it's free jazz. So I'm gonna shout out Vaporwave. So if anyone's interested, YouTube Vaporwave, and you'll hear what real future music sounds like.
Thank you very much, BenBot. Thank you all for listening. And as always, BenBot, initiate self-destruct mode.
Let's get out of here. That's good.
This has been a UCB comedy production. Check out our other shows on the UCB Comedy Podcast Network.